Good evening, everybody. We are back with some Cyberpunk tonight. Now, I'll probably have to caution this a couple of times. I forgot that it was Victoria Day on Monday, so I'm actually rather glad that I did Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop on Wednesday because that means I will have less to forget when we come back to Ace Attorney. But that does mean that let me just see where we are in the week. 1, 2, 3. Cool. So it looks like it will actually be this. We're going to be waiting a week for the next stream, I think, because Monday is Victoria Day, and then Wednesday is the third Wednesday of the month, which means I'll be at the local game dev meetup. But that's fine. We will be back to Ace Attorney once we're ready for that. Somebody did ask about Doom the Dark Ages, which I will confess I'm actually rather I am rather looking forward to trying. I didn't do Doom Eternal because Dark Ages was about to, or the Dark Ages was about to come out. But the only thing is that I did see the system requirements for it, and they are rather high. This is true, of course, for the Indiana Jones game as well. So I would be less inclined to promise that until I've tried out the, until I've actually tried out the game and seen how it performs. If I feel that it can work well in the, if I feel that it can work well in the on the stream, then I'm sure I will try it at some point. But I also sort of think now is not a bad time for me to let the Dark Ages sort of sit back for a little while because there's so many significant broadcasters who are doing it. It's one of these cases where, people who really want to see Doom the Dark Ages are going to have their ideal broadcaster cover it. Now, if I'm that ideal broadcaster, let me know and I'll reconsider. But I don't know if there's anybody really sitting down to say, I really wonder what System Jock thinks of Doom the Dark Ages. So yeah, with all of that in mind, I'm very much inclined to try it, and I won't rule out the possibility of doing it on stream. But it's one where, my graphics card is really the thing that keeps me. That's really the thing that keeps me from playing kind of top of the line major releases, and of course the fact that I have. Game Pass has sort of changed my inclination to play new games in the first place. But yeah, on top of that, unless it's something that a developer has given me, I've always tended to find that I don't really need to do new stuff right away anyway. And then that just gives me some time to kind of catch up and play some other things. But of course, the one major release that we did get to play close to release was Cyberpunk, which I'm now opening up. I also have a cup of coffee in front of me, so today is a good day. Also, because I didn't realize it was a long weekend until basically this afternoon, there's a few things that have been good. Okay, well, I actually rather like my job, so I don't know if it's a good thing that I get Monday off, but I suppose if I really want to, I do have my work laptop at home, so I can log in and get some stuff done if I can't come up with anything else. Now, the plan for Cyberpunk tonight will be to jump through. Basically, I've been hanging out with a bunch of the fixers. I don't mind doing the side quests. I don't think it's a terrible way to spend an evening. I have been a little bit slower on the progress than maybe I normally would be, but I don't know. They're at worst diverting. Usually they are considerably better than that, and then they do give me a little bit of momentum to sort of move towards some of the main plot, particularly because there's going to be some of the main plot I've done earlier, so we get a chance to just kind of clear that out in a maybe in one stream, maybe two, depending on how many we need to go through, and then the rest will be new material for me. All right, so I've got an undiscovered. I was talking with someone yesterday where they sort of said that they felt Cyberpunk actually pushed Cyberpunk 2077 actually pushed Cyberpunk back, which is I'll confess the first I've heard of that. I think I kind of understand this. So there's actually a few dimensions across which I can imagine disappointment with Cyberpunk. I personally have been having a good time with it. I think I've shared my criticisms of it, but I think especially with Phantom Liberty, there are, for me, it has definitely been a net positive. I actually think this is a pretty good game, but I also can understand why, for a number of different reasons, some of which are maybe not even related to the quality of the game, might actually find it might find it a disappointment, if not something that's not for them. Although I'm intrigued by this idea that it's a step back, because I'm really trying to think of sort of stories or products that have actually like regressed a genre. It's not unprecedented, so I know.
One of my netrunners is unresponsive, in spite of clear orders to remain in direct contact with me. Something must have happened. He would not dare go against me. Familiarize yourself with the brief and proceed swiftly. I need him.
This probably isn't a good example that I'm going to give, but a good example, or sorry, this isn't a good example. A good example, no. This maybe isn't the best example of sort of a genre going, sort of regressing as a result of a work, but I would say an interesting little bit of film history is, there's actually a couple things you could draw out of this, and this does have a slight cyberpunk angle to it because of some of the creators involved. But one of the most famous unrealized Stanley Kubrick projects was his Napoleon project. And he really wanted to do this, as far as I can tell. He had sort of a filing cabinet. I mean, I think the legend of this goes that essentially this filing system that he had essentially had an account for where Napoleon was and what he was doing at basically any point in his life. And certainly, I mean, I think some of the Kubrick stuff can be overstated in terms of his meticulousness, but like this is definitely a guy who puts a lot of effort into his film, for better or for worse. There was, I think, an example, I can't remember, it may have even been John le Carré, but is talking about, is proposing something to like a BBC film. Like it was going to be like some film. It may have been Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I'm trying to remember it, but and apparently he was like really excited. So like Kubrick came up. Kubrick, expressed interest in doing it, and he's like suggests it to the BBC producer. It's like, Stanley Kubrick will direct this, and he's like, yeah, if I wanted this project to be like 2 years late and millions of dollars over, or billion, I guess it'd be millions of pounds over budget, I mean, I'd hire Stanley Kubrick. Which is always really funny to hear, right? Because of course I think of Kubrick and as like, the absolute master, probably my favorite filmmaker, and still my favorite filmmaker. I know a lot of people have betrayed the faith and moved over to Christopher Nolan, and don't get me wrong, Christopher Nolan's really, really good filmmaker too. But yeah, Kubrick is definitely the GOAT of all time, as the youths say. The fact of the matter is that the film business is a business. And, actually, what the best analogy is? It's the Legend of Zelda products that Nintendo puts out and comparing them against, even very good indies, or, a sort of like a even something like a Call of Duty, which is obviously like a major. Actually, maybe Call of Duty would be a good example of that. But, like a very good major release by a developer. So you'll always hear these stories about the tremendous polish how something like Tears of the Kingdom gets or whatever. And oh, why don't all developers make their games that way? It's like, well, because when you have a Legend of Zelda style release, that's the reason why people buy hardware that costs hundreds of dollars specifically to play those kinds of games. The the return that Nintendo's going to see on something like that, and the prestige that comes from that, is beyond just the dollar values in terms of like units sold for the game. But Mario versus Rabbids, despite the fact that it does have like a major Nintendo character, and I mean like Rabbids are I think a fairly decent piece of intellectual property from Ubisoft. Like that you do actually need to deliver on time. There's a, hey, Revive Snow, good to see you. There's a system of money that goes out and comes in for developers, and if you have too many delays, that ties up human resources. You need to keep everybody on payroll. It costs more money to do, but more importantly, it really messes with your ability to run the business, right? Like the thing. So for publishers, they're going to see a bunch of money from their different releases come in over time. Like one thing that you can see that a publisher does is that they will convert a long stream of revenues over the life of a game into sort of this lump sum that's paid to the people making the thing. So they play, I mean, it's really funny that people kind of give these negative analogies to publishers as banks, but that's exactly what they're doing. And banks actually perform really necessary functions, right? I don't think it's a good idea to save up to go to school or to save up. I mean, mortgages are a little bit different, but like if you're saving up to go to school, you are earning money at your low skilled labor. Whereas if you borrow to go to school, you can repay that loan with your high skilled labor. So unless the interest rate is something ridiculous, and of course, there's government loans, which generally are more favorable than what you'd get in the private markets anyway, it clearly makes more sense to do, to use debt. Debt is one of these things where I think people have been scared away from, and in some cases, usefully scared away. You don't want to, buy $20,000 of potato chips on a credit card and pay near 20% interest in Canada on something like that. But that shouldn't scare you from something like an investment, right? The schooling, of course, being an investment in yourself, unless of course you're using school as like consumption. You're going there so you can enjoy the Greek life and just get a C- in every single one of your courses and dedicate yourself to a joint major. And I don't want to like insult anybody's major, but there are some majors which are a little bit more employable than others. But anyways, this was supposed to be about Cyberpunk, but so it's fair to say Kubrick stuff would definitely be more in the Tears of the Kingdom category, where so long as the financiers understand what they're getting into, and everybody's kind of on the same page, sure, wait the extra time. Most of his movies made money, not all of them, but those are more the prestige ones. But as it turns out, there was a film, I think it was Waterloo, that just bombed, and it effectively killed that project, even though I think it was going to be Kubrick. I think Jack Nicholson was supposed to play Napoleon at some point. And it became this, it was still an unrealized project when he died. I think the script has actually been recovered now. Incidentally, there's also a script for David Lynch's Dune sequel, which was never filmed. So that's a couple of homework projects for me to look at. But that would actually not be a bad example of a kind of failure that actually prevents the creation of further works or similar works. Now the thing is, I don't necessarily think Cyberpunk 2077 is in the same category as that. I will point out, by the way, the Cyberpunk angle to this would be, there's a detail I learned about the making of the first Blade Runner movie. the Ridley Scott one. And Joe Turkel, you may recall, worked with Stanley Kubrick, probably most famously in The Shining. He plays the bartender. But he actually worked with Kubrick on more than one film. I know he was. I know he was in The Killing. I think he was in another one though. For those of you who don't like, he's not an easy one to remember. So if you haven't seen The Shining, he plays. Uh, oh God, what's Eldon Tyrell in? Sounds like a Game of Thrones character now, actually. But yeah, he plays the creator of the replicants, the head of the Tyrell Corporation in the original Blade Runner, with big glasses, good at chess. But apparently Ridley Scott was asking him lots and lots of questions about, what Kubrick would have done, to a point that I think Turkel eventually had to tell him, like, Ridley, you got to make this your own movie. And I mean, again, Kubrick's really good, to a really tough act to follow, but he's also a really good point of inspiration. I don't think it's maybe a coincidence that, you have things like The Duelists, and, you can probably find a mapping there to Barry Lyndon. But, which I found a wonderful thing. So I thought I was the only one who liked Barry Lyndon for such a long time, but apparently there's been this like Barry Lyndon renaissance, and everybody recognizes what a great movie that is. So yay. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's really good. But yeah, I sort of think the fact that he made, like, the project was originally called Kit Bag, but it was, it's really Scott's Napoleon film, and I imagine that was definitely sort of the. I think Scott probably wanted to really make the movie, but I would not be surprised if there is still a little bit of the shadow of Kubrick lingering in the background. Maybe there's an interesting question of what would AI have been like if Ridley Scott had made it. Although, to be clear, Spielberg was always the one who was intended to do that project. Anyways, we are ostensibly here about Cyberpunk. So, but yeah, it was kind of an interesting. Like I said, I never heard from that. I never really heard this idea that Cyberpunk caused sort of a regress in. Cyberpunk 2077 had caused a regress in the cyberpunk genre. And I don't want to give too much weight. Like, it's like any comment that someone makes, right? Some people might just be sort of shooting from the hip, and maybe it's not necessarily worth a whole lot of thought. Now, generally, when I talk to people, I don't like thinking that way. Just because it's an unfamiliar thought does not mean it's one that needs to be immediately dismissed. It's maybe one that I wouldn't put my own personal stamp on it, but it is actually kind of interesting to ask the question, like, does the release of Cyberpunk 2077 limit further releases or further development? Does it represent sort of a path that success can actually be a problem in some cases, right? Does it represent a path that the genre's gone down, which sort of freezes it in this unproductive area? So I want to be a little careful in terms of how I say this, because I realize there's a lot of people who like this type of writing, but there's a couple of writers groups that I've been involved in where it's quite clear that the most popular type of reading there are sort of young adult fantasy novels. And again, I don't want to be too snobbish about this, right? I think if you like reading, that, read that. You don't need some jerk on the internet to make you feel bad for reading a certain type of thing. But I think it's also been pretty clear for me that I like, where possible, a lot of variety. And the one worry I always have when it seems like there's just a really clear diet of these types of reading is the question of, how do you challenge yourself? Because, I would like to think that reading didn't hit its peak around middle school for me. And I say this partly just because I did get through Beowulf after Senua's Saga. And I think one of the things that really stuck with me was that it's a very, very different poem when you don't have to study it, because I think most of the times I've ever done Beowulf, the focus has always been on the battle with Grendel. Never actually finishes the damn poem. And there's a lot more going on in that. Now, it's not the first time. Like, I knew that he fought a dragon in the end and such. So it wasn't like, it's not like it blew my mind when I finally read the full poem. But it's very easy to focus a little too much on the, the He-Man who punches the demon to death part if you just keep focusing on the Grendel story. And of course, armed with the sorts of things that you get from English classes and maybe, listening. So like one thing I think would be great is that if you I'm just going to, after I read the brief, I'm going to get, just deal with a quick, text that I got. But yeah, so, even if you like fantasy, for example, J.R.R. Tolkien wrote something on Beowulf. In fact, he kind of tried to defend Beowulf as a poem and a work of sort of fiction or imagination versus a historical document, something that would be original at the time. He also tried to do his own translation of it. I think he actually did a prose and a verse one. I feel a little less secure on that. But, you don't even need to like say, okay, I'm going to have my medicine now and I'm going to read a literary critic. Like, if you like, it felt like just kind of a wet, warm blanket on me today, Revive Snow. I don't know what it's like where you are, but yeah, like if you like fantasy stuff, you can go and you can read C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien entirely about fairy stories and what they mean and how you make them, and you are engaging with literary criticism, right? It's not just, Joseph Campbell and, I need to learn about the monomyth. There's a lot of people who have talked about literature who have wound up making things that are very, very popular. And again, the aim here is not necessarily to pull away from the interest. Like if people want to read The Hunger Games, they should continue to read The Hunger Games. But as always, the question to me is, how do you challenge yourself? Sometimes it's reading the unfamiliar, sometimes it's rereading. So I'm getting a lot more out of Dune because I'm familiar with it. But when I first read Dune, I was like Paul's age, and I'm not Paul's age anymore. So it's a very different book, and it's a very different book having read Foundation. And again, please don't mistake me. I'm not holding Dune up as this great challenge of literature, right? There's obviously more complicated works, but like this is an example where you can, if you read outside of what you normally read and like, you start making connections that are unfamiliar, and sometimes that will even mean that one day you want to take on something a bit more difficult, if nothing else, just so you can kind of see. Like it's a little bit like drinking. Maybe you're trying to find out what enjoyment all the adults got out of it at some point. Anyways, I've really kind of gone off the rails off of this whole thing. But as an example, right? If what it comes down to, like what I mean when I'm talking about angles or paths that genres can go down, or that success can sometimes lead to, right? There's for a while been a big resurgence in terms of book sales, but it has actually been focused in that young adult area. And I actually think as that wave has we're kind of at the tail end of that wave now. And I don't think it's coincidental that there also seems to be a lot of drama in that space now. Like a lot of people talking about, how this author was actually really a bad person or arrogant or whatever. Apparently Goodreads is just its own sort of horrible place to, full of drama, as any group is, I suppose. And I imagine that this is sort of starting to fight over the audience that's left. But again, it would be wonderful if you could say, hey, people, there's a whole new type of literature now, or there's more literature, there's more money coming in for literature now. But again, if all the money is going to young adult literature, then that can sometimes mean that, okay, but where does the next Handmaid's Tale come from? Or, where's the next, where's the next? I mean, I like Neil Stephenson stuff, right? So he's still writing. But or you can go for the really fancy literary stuff, which is usually written by university professors. So as with anything, right? You kind of want a balance and a mix. So of course, if Cyberpunk 2077 is very successful and it leads to sort of this single note of what cyberpunk can be, I'm actually more sympathetic to the person's claim. I don't quite see evidence for that myself. I think Cyberpunk 2077 can exist, and I think a lot of people can still do interesting cyberpunk stories independent of whatever the whatever this setting has to say about the genre. But it was a comment that sort of provoked some thought, right? Those are the ones that I like the most, where it isn't necessarily obviously true to me at the time, but it's something that I wanted to spend some time to engage with. So that's what I've got for my report from the normal world. Let me just take a quick second with this text. A friend of mine has started writing again, so I wanted to give them a bit of encouragement. Okay, SOS, Merc needed. Locate Netrunner Chang Hoon Nam, 67 years old, regular associate. Restaurant on Crescent Street. For years, I worked to get jobs done comfortably with a crew I handpicked myself. I chose Chang Hoon Nam years ago, and he hasn't let me down once. I don't know what happened to him, but you must get him back. Check the basement in that Chinese place. He keeps his gear there, sometimes takes a side gig or two. I think he's still alive. If he weren't, he's the type who'd come back as a ghost and apologize. Just like in those tales from the old country that make me want to puke. He's sentimental like that. Actually, here's a question for you, Revive Snow. I don't know how familiar you are with Dune, but do you know about a Dune board game? Because I learned something really cool about it. I probably don't need to sneak right now. So do you know the victory conditions for the Bene Gesserit in the old 70s Dune board game? You haven't played it before, but you saw it in a hobby store not that long ago. I also found out apparently there's more than one, but I definitely I'm familiar at least with one that was made around the 70s. It was reissued for the film. But let me actually just see what the... Sorry, I will actually play Cyberpunk at some point, but... Dune DOS game. Oh, that's right, because there was a Dune game. There's like Dune 2, which was the first RTS. But then there was like a hybrid sort of strategy point-and-click adventure. I actually thought that was an Amiga game. Interesting. Okay. So now I'm kind of curious about Dune board games. So Reddit says which Dune board game to get. So Dune 2019 is the original 1979, but with compiled rules and adjustments from the 40 years of play. It's an excellent asymmetrical Dune, a game of conquest and diplomacy, is a simplified 4-player variant of the classic game. While it's a fine game, I do not recommend it because the classic is leagues ahead. Dune Imperium is the modern Dune game. It blends worker placement and deck building. Okay. Right. I actually still haven't seen the new ones either, but that was mostly because I wanted to get through the book again. So the book that I have is actually, I got this when I lived in Kelowna. It was a used copy, but it was the movie tie-in for the 1984 David Lynch Dune. So it's got like photographs of the it's got the photographs of the like scenes from the movie inside of it, which is kind of neat. Kyle MacLachlan on the back. But yeah, so the 1979 game, or now 2019. So apparently the victory condition for the Bene Gesserit is you secretly write down a faction and a turn. And if that faction wins on the turn that you say, it's actually a victory for the Bene Gesserit, which I think is just such a cool way of doing that. So like it creates a sort of mistrust of the Bene Gesserit, but they do become sort of they have kind of this necessary kingmaker role, because of course adjusting the period means that you can still get the victory. You just need to make sure that you get you just need to, like, this is just it. Like you want to work well with the Bene Gesserit, because obviously it will give you an advantage, but you don't want to work well enough with them that it falls into their plans. And of course nobody knows. So, and of course it's just, their plans are measured in centuries. They, you have to sort of know the rough dynamics of how the game's going to play out. And you need to sort of plant those seeds, in a way that, allows you to move subtly. So I think that is just a really cool idea. It's a very on brand sort of thing. Apparently it was made by the same people who made a board game called Cosmic Encounter, which seemed to innovate a whole lot of mechanics from that wound up being used in modern board games too. Jamie, how you doing tonight? Oops. Okay, BD55E9 we can do. And then 55, 1C55. You actually picked a great time to stop by, because I think I've got my first 20 minutes of babbling out of the way.
It's you in the near future. Every net runner ends up the same way. Brain fried by some corpo ice.
Looks like he's still breathing.
Gig, info on Vortex. I've already got someone on this job, but could use some help. Try to follow Vortex's footprints on the net. There has to be some trace. Send whatever you find directly to me. And I'm sure there will be plenty more talking. Jamie, don't you worry. Okay. I'm trying to think. So if I do FF here, I can do 1C, E9, E9. I know Revive Snow is based in Canada. Do you get to enjoy? How many of you do get to enjoy Victoria Day? Kangtao Container, Spectral Kid to Changun Nam. I see you're trying to get your hands on the KT container. You couldn't fucking wait for me? Manage on my own, thanks. If I can try to prove something, you fucking tattoo brain. The old guard will never give up. We know how close. We know how to get things done in my time. That kind of bullshit. Am I close? At least tell me you're using that splinter I said. Without it, they'll hard boil your brain. No bullshit. A Gramps like you has no place jacking around like this solo. No need to panic. I told you, I'll be fine. What, this some kind of last hurrah? Going out with a bang? Some other cliche? You know what? I don't give a shit anymore. Do whatever the fuck you want, you stubborn old fossil. New work urgent. Nam, you are needed today. An update now. Receive my message. What's going on? Jajangmyeon recipe. Sin pork diced into cubes, potatoes, zucchini, carrots, onion, and garlic diced into cubes or thinly sliced. Fresh udon, sesame oil, 1 teaspoon. Tablespoon. Starch and water mix, 3 tablespoons. Jajang paste, 1 cup. Protein substitute. Minkai stall. New deliveries on Thursdays. Genetic code AP836SO or AP836SO1. Vegetable substitute. Aldecado's Transports. Ask Dakota. Sauce substitutes from upstairs kitchen. Sanyong Wednesday morning. Brazilian, so you don't even know what Victoria Day is. So that's Queen Victoria is the one who had the audacity to choose the nation's capital to be this rather difficult place that gets very cold in the winter. Anyways, it's reference to Queen Victoria, so it's a holiday for us. But just the Canadians. Obviously, I'm going to loot the guy's place before I help him out.
2 seconds. Wait, I can't.
Wake up.
Personal note, Spectral Kid, Derek Craddock, 67% at co-location match, no time match, not him. Amir Owens, question mark, Byron Arasa, 74% code coincidence, but too old. Spectral is 13 years max. Dwayne Roberts, UX 97 in activity encoded. Jenny Belter, setup failed. Tish Lyles, check with T-Bug, may know her.
Give me 1 moment. I don't know how long I here, but as you Americans say, I'm starving.
Oh, you're in luck. There's a restaurant upstairs.
I know. The whole time. Those aromas. What torture.
So you were conscious?
Partially. More like in deep hibernation.
Did you switch on the lights?
Yes. I was ready for a game of twice for yes, once for now. But you beat me to it. Fine work you did.
Any idea what's in the Corpo code case?
You young people ask too many questions. See for yourself.
Huh. Maybe it's not such a good idea after all.
Ah, you're a fast learner.
So, you're probably wondering who sent me.
Wakako. She always find an excuse to drag me to her place for dinner. You must visit me someday. I'll show you a few net running tricks.
Wasn't it me who just saved your ass?
We never stop learning hard lessons. But you don't have to do everything alone.
Thanks, I'll think about it.
Actually, the holiday hasn't started yet, so that'll be on Monday. It'll be why I'm not broadcasting on Monday. But yeah, I was just kind of curious. Like, I have aggregates in terms of the audience, but I'm never sure how many Canadians watch.
I was informed of how you handled yourself. Good work. I expected nothing less from you. I am closing the contract.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, it's I don't think you're expected to know Canadian holidays, Jamie. So it's all good. But yeah, actually, Revive Snow makes a good point. There are a couple of times. The first thing that... Well done, my dear. I see that you treat your work seriously. Not only have you earned my respect, but those of more serious clients. I leave the best contracts in your capable hands. Treat them with respect. But yeah, one of the first things, so when I first moved out here, there's a really nice sort of Uber driver who took me to the airport, and they actually had come from Ottawa. So they they kind of talked about how, like, one of the things they really remembered was in winter, they'd go along they'd be skating along, kind of going to all the different stores, and they have sort of something set up. I've never actually done that. There were a couple of rather mild winters where I don't think you could do the skating. And then I'm also, I like the warmth. I'm not necessarily one to go out in the cold. So I've not had the experience yet myself, but I don't know, one day. I should probably try it. Attention NCPD subcons suspected to organize crime activity off Willow Street. APB out on one Shinobu Imai, convicted on multiple counts of human trafficking and forced labor. City officials offering a reward for neutralizing Imai's criminal network in the Willow Street area. So the easy answer here is to mess with the... Okay, well, there's going to be a couple things I do here. I can just go in guns blazing, but if I can, I'd like to be a little more clever about it. Well, that didn't do much. Okay, that's not what I wanted. I tried. Something blew me up. Alright, so I'm gonna have to wait for the cripple movement to run out. Just wait for the weapon glitch to go by and then... Oops. Clearly I'm not paying attention. All right, so all those alerts are just the cameras. Mission accomplished in an unconventional way. Am I a big fan of Dune? Good question, Revive Snow. I'd say yes. I realize that a big fan of Dune can sometimes have, very profound meaning for some people. So I think there are some people who are like really into Dune where I could not match their enthusiasm. But as I said earlier, like I've really gained a greater appreciation for the series having read Isaac Asimov's Foundation. At the very least, the first book. I'm looking forward to reading some of the other entries. And there's something like the more I read it, the more I kind of appreciate little details that I didn't see before. And I think there's also something to be said for a series that is done. So there's two things that are kind of neat about it, which is one, how it really seems to have been this very fertile source material for like a lot of things that are not even directly related to Dune, right? So obviously there's an inspiration to Star Wars is a really big one. But just in terms of some of the big ideas that are present inside of it, I can see why it's been such a big inspiration for a lot of people. And weirdly enough, it's one that's gotten a lot of adaptations, although isn't always as recognized as much. So there's the only one that was made during Frank Herbert's lifetime, which was the David Lynch one, which was not necessarily very well received. And then there were made-for-television versions. So I believe there was Dune, and I think Dune Messiah also got an adaptation. And then, of course, there's the really big one, the Denis Villeneuve one, which Dune in Part 1 and Part 2. And I think that's probably the biggest sort of popular conception of it. But even in terms of gaming, right, you've got, the sort of quasi-adventure game that we talked about, Dune. Then there's the RTS Dune. And some of the Dune adaptations that we've seen are largely a product of some of the films. So, there's Dune Spice Wars, for instance. Now there's the MMO coming out as well. But again, it's really interesting to see how that has sort of captured the imagination, and it's easy to see why. But the other thing that's kind of interesting about it is there was an interesting point that somebody made about the movie John Carter, which you can be forgiven if you haven't seen it. It was a bomb so big that it kind of showed up in Disney's financial statements for the quarter in which it was released. And on paper, it actually seems to be just such an obvious, no-brainer in terms of a successful movie. So I think it was Brad Bird who, maybe I'm wrong on the director, but anyways, the lead on that project was just someone who had been going from strength to strength at Pixar. John Carter is based off of A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs, which has just been this touchstone for so many science fiction stories ever since, right? Like, if you want to largely understand big, successful Hollywood science fiction stories, basically just read A Princess of Mars and you'll see the template. And yet, for some reason, some people blame a very poor marketing campaign. I don't know. I never saw the film myself, but it just didn't land. And so there was a side of me that wondered, is there sort of this idea? So the argument that someone says, which is that you can have this touchstone of science fiction that is this great source of inspiration, and it's wonderful when people riff off of it, but when people see the original, it actually doesn't work. And I wondered if Dune was in that category, And then of course the Denis Villeneuve one came out and like everybody loved it. So that kind of that's a easily falsifiable hypothesis in that case. But yeah, and Underwater Monk says reading Dune changed the way you thought about the idea of fiction. You're one of those people with deep feelings on it. Yeah, this is just it. Like, I really like the Dune series, and again, for me, I've been really surprised at how much more I get out of Dune the more I read things that were inspirations for Dune. Which is weird because I'm spending so much time talking about things that were inspired by Dune as opposed to inspirations for Dune itself. But yeah, like I sort of, if nothing else, I just kind of want to make sure that I'm not trying to, play in someone else's sandbox. I definitely know that there are people with a greater appreciation of the series than I may have. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Like, the thing for me is that I don't know where it went wrong. And I know, like, as far as the pedigree is concerned, there was some serious talent behind that film. But serious talent can still make a not very good movie, so... I was thinking more like foundation and like decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Well, I guess decline and fall of the Roman Empire would be an inspiration for foundation, but yes, also. Well, actually, this was one of the things I'm really struck by. So remember when I first read Dune, like I didn't dislike some of the science-y, like some of the geographic details. Or maybe geographic isn't what I'm looking. I mean, obviously there's the map inside of it, but like, I remember like when I first read Kyne's fate in Dune, like I didn't dislike it, but it's like, okay, that happened to a character, and we're gonna move on to the story of this space prophet. And I remember like reading it. I've actually been reading it recently, and I remember reading it again. I was like, man, what a great little sequence. And I was actually thinking a little bit of some of the scenes in an old sort of indie science fiction film called, well, sort of indie. It was like Fox Searchlight, I think. It was Sunshine, starring Cillian Murphy. I had a few other ones, but Cillian Murphy's probably the best known of the alumni now. And there's a couple of sequences where people sort of face the raw power of the sun, and there's absolutely nothing left. And sort of seeing I don't know, just there's something about sort of a planet scale, maybe not planet scale, but like a planet ending your life. Is just a sort of level of epicness which I maybe didn't quite have the full appreciation of at the when I first read it. So again, it's always kind of fun when you return to something, and again with more context in terms of other reading, and then just maybe a different kind of perspective. It's kind of neat what moments sort of stand out to you in these stories. Transport for Monday, Shinobu, what's up with these cages? What the hell you order them for? Gotta keep the workers there. I lock them up, nobody to run. What, somebody ran on you already? Not yet. Yeah, you know why? They're illegals, came here to work. Where the fuck would they go? Down to the station so they could wait in line to get deported? Enough with the cage bullshit, seriously. Okay, yeah, we've read those ones before. Is there just one more from Wakako? We'll see. Workers order transport daily for 15 people to Kuroshi Factory, 8 people to All Foods, 25 to Biotechnica, could be sick, 3 to Masala Studios, 6 to Pierogi World, 2 Gotta Be Smart to Yaiba, and 13 to Tektronica. I don't know if I left any weaponry on the ground. I kind of ran through this pretty quick. Looks like I did. I'm sure I'll scrap all this stuff eventually, but I'll do it in one big batch. I used to kind of do it in between segments, but I think I just wound up spending more time. I think I just spent more time in the inventory screen doing it that way. Yeah, actually, Underwater Monk, I don't know if you were here when we, for the earlier part, but one of the questions I asked Revive Snow was about the board game. So it was a 1979 board game, and one of the things I thought that was such a cool detail about it was it sort of has asymmetric victory conditions, and if you played the Bene Gesserit, your victory condition was at the beginning of the game you would write down the faction that would win and on what turn they would win. And if that faction wins on the turn, then it's actually a Bene Gesserit victory. And I just thought that is such a clever idea for sort of realizing that faction in the in a board game. Also, again, like, it's notable the time, right? Like, this is obviously there was a lot of innovation in board games around that time, but the specifically. That seems like the kind of innovation that you might see in sort of a modern one, because there's a whole bunch of new experimentation happening. But yeah, well, actually, I ordered a copy of the reissuing, like the 2019 reissuing of it. So I also, to my understanding, there's another sort of popular in hardcore board game circles. Cosmic Encounter, which apparently was the same team. Or at least that's my understanding. I could be wrong on this stuff.
I need someone for a quick and quiet operation. It involves planting bugs in a heavily guarded area. You have the brief. Read it.
All right, Agent Saboteur. Place a wiretap in a Tiger Claw-controlled shrine, Shinto shrine at Milagro Terrace. Details. The person should not stray from the road and the tiger should not leave his mountain steeps, or misfortune will find them both. Tiger Claw boss Takikazo thinks he's smart. He thinks I won't find out about his agreement at the Shinto shrine on Milagro Terrace. He thinks I don't know he's using the shrine's Honden for secret meetings. He thinks he can rule Japantown without my influence. He'll be wrong. I'll give you a wiretap to place right in the Shintai in the most sacred of Shinto spaces. Don't make a noise and don't disappoint me. Do you play board games often? Not really, Revive Snow. I wish I played them more than I did, but I run into the same problem that a lot of people do, which is it's a big time investment. And I think the types of board games that I'm interested in tend to be the more complicated ones, which have, you know, like they have their merits, but it can often be a very big ask, you know, to not just ask that time from someone, but also their attention to sort of learn the rules. And of course, if you're more experienced than someone else, then there's also going to be a problem in terms of, you know, is it actually enjoyable for someone to feel outmatched? Now, a lot of the stuff that I haven't necessarily played. In fact, one of the things that I tend to get are board games with solitaire options. But yeah, the ones that I have are largely more for study rather than actual use. So I like them more than I play them, I think would be the best summary for me. And did I see the Foundation TV show? You loved the books but didn't finish the show. So I do have Apple TV Plus, and I'm interested in seeing the adaptation, but I'm going to be going in with low expectations because I think so the first thing that I understand is that they tried to my understanding, they tried to make it a little bit more of a traditional serial in the sense that you would have these consistent characters over, a season, which fair enough. But obviously what kind of made Foundation interesting was this very long time horizon. And that you would, the individual character, and actually, sorry, I should find this Reddit review because it was so catty. I was so amused by it. Let me see if I can find. Let me see if I can find it again. Yeah, I can't find it right now, but it was like it like everything that made that book good, like they hated it. Um, so I think it can work, and I don't necessarily think things need to be faithful adaptations to the to the the source material to be good. So I thought the little that I saw of Man in the High Castle, to me it was quite obvious that they had deviated from the book, but they had deviated in interesting ways that made it an interesting TV show. Now I don't know if I love Man in the High Castle, so it will take a lot for me to say that I would prefer the series to the book, but I was at least encouraged by a couple of the things that they did with the story. I mean, one thing is I just don't feel that the Germans are as big of a presence in that book as they are in, or at least seem to be in the TV show. Would be one difference I would observe. But then again, I think the hook on this one is more the alternative history in which the Axis wins the Second World War rather than than the specific details of that original story. But yeah, anyway, it's just one of these things where I kind of wish that they were a little more brave in terms of saying we're going to do a type of television which is different from what we have. So if you think about how TV's kind of worked, they used to be sort of these self-contained episodes, and then there would be some series where there would maybe be sort of an arc over like a season, but it maybe wouldn't be so important to watch. It wouldn't be so important to watch every episode in order. So I don't have an immediate familiarity with this, but I think maybe an example that I could get out of this. I've not actually seen that much of this show, but there was a show on Fox called The X-Files, and I'm pretty sure this was an episode written by William Gibson. Basically it involves sort of these murders in a video game. Actually, I'm going to look this up and see if I can find it. Speaking of William Gibson, by the way, Neuromancer is being adapted by Apple TV Plus. So let me see. Selected work. Now, how about all of works? I didn't realize he did a script for Alien 3. It was called First Person Shooter. Original air date February 27th, 2000. So 25-year-old TV episode is all I've seen of the X-Files. I'm sure I've seen another X-Files episode, but anyways, like, so this is one where I know of the X-Files just because there's a lot that was made sort of the mythology of the X-Files, and like there was this building that I would go to called I think the William H. Davis Center, and I think he played like a character, the cigarette smoking man. I don't know if he ever got like a real name, but I just knew it was like that was the name that came up. And I think because Vince Gilligan for Breaking Bad worked on the X-Files as well. I believe one of the episodes of Breaking Bad is called Cancer Man, as sort of a tip of the hat to his early work on that show. But anyways, like you can sort of see how that's almost this, there's almost this like transitional period for television where you'll have like purely fixed episodes. And I guess probably the best example that you can get out of this would be something like The Twilight Zone, where they're really like short stories on their own. And if there's any connection, it's more so, you know, do you like this kind of story? Well, you're going to get this kind of story, you know, reliably from this series, but that's about the only consistency you're going to see. And Black Mirror is obviously the modern version of that. And then you have something that I guess, again, I'm not a scholar of TV history by any stretch of the imagination, but basically you can sort of see how X-Files, it has this broader arc, but it still has enough to sort of have these one-off episodes that either they're just going to have some fun, or, you know, there isn't that feeling of a need to sort of treat it like, you know, you're Charles Dickens and you're releasing parts of your story in, you know, in the newspaper. And of course now, you know, you'll have something like a Breaking Bad. I think probably this style started with HBO, and I know The Sopranos gets a lot of credit for this, but I actually think, and I know The Wire is the other one, but I actually think Oz, which is a prison drama, predates both of them. HBO arguably is the one I know more about, because there was just a certain period of time when I was like really interested in this development on television, because it seemed that there were more shows that were sort of embracing this idea of it being like a longer form, that you could do these longer stories that couldn't be done within the 2 or 3 hours that you have for a movie. And of course, like every show is like that now. So all of that's a long setup for saying that it struck me that the Foundation TV series was more in the line of what I just described here, which is they want to have like a big arc over time. And I think because it was, oh God, what's the guy's name? He like wrote Batman Begin, or at least co-wrote. Is it David Goyer? Yes. You know, once they brought him on, it was sort of like, okay, so this is going to be a little bit more of a standard TV show. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be bad, but I thought it would have been interesting if they really took the fact that, you know, we're Apple, we're breaking into TV, and we're going to, you know, Foundation has been something that has defied adaptation for such a long time, and we're going to do something, you know, crazy, and we're going to go to sort of that structure of the books, which is, yes, there's going to be like the broad arc of the Foundation, but we're going to do this like the Foundation stories, where you don't have like a central character who you are going to be sort of grabbing onto and rooting for. And the thing is, that could actually be terrible television. That could be something that audiences flat out reject, and everybody would be talking about like what a joke, you know, this arrogant tech company is for going in and like trampling their muddy boots on on Isaac Asimov's living room or something. But I would have thought that it would be like, I would be interested in that, because everything that I've seen of that TV series shows that there is a lot more of the Empire than I remember seeing in. I've only read the first of the Foundation books. I do have the other two now, and I'm looking forward to reading them. But yeah, like overall, I only understood the Empire as this thing that we got to observe the decline of from a distance, from the Foundation's eyes, rather than a lot of attention being given to the Empire. So, like I said, I've kind of learned to expect that it'll be different from what I would have wanted to see, but I'm not sold yet that I will dislike it for that. And the other thing Underwater Monk said was, unfortunately, there's not a big complicated board game scene in Ottawa. I've been looking for opportunities to play those types of games as well. Yeah, I actually think that's why like companies like GMT do more solitaire ones. And I also think it's also just a function of their target market. So I just think a lot of, hey, yep, good to see you. I think a lot of the people, who like those games are like, they're around the age that they conceivably have families or like job responsibilities. And so there isn't quite the same opportunity for people to, set up and like have a full complement of people to play like a distant plane, for the full duration. And so, I do notice that there's a bit of a tendency to do things like, lunchtime games, like things that can be completed within an hour. And then the other answer is more bots, like more solo play. And that also kind of makes sense because to a certain extent, there's probably enough time now that there's a division between video games and like board games. But I also think to a certain extent, there is the competition. It's leisure time, right? So you're competing with Netflix, you're competing with video games. And so if you want an option for sort of play or just something, something that is not work, you have lots of options. And so, I think a lot of the board games have sort of adapted to reflect those changes. No Senua tonight, so it's going to be a little... Oh yeah, I also want to get a save in. I'll actually take the time to clear my other saves, though. And that's just because I keep getting cranky messages from GOG that I'm at capacity. So I do remember struggling a bit on this one to avoid some of the detection. This area I'm actually safe in. It's more once I get inside. So I'll do one sort of normal pass. I think that might actually be it, and the rest of it I need to do a ping for, but all right. No, you fool. Sometimes I get lucky and I can see the cameras as well. I don't know if I'll do this full story, but yep, did I ever tell you the story about how a cranky American statistician is maybe not directly responsible, but is pretty darn close to being directly responsible for why there are Japanese megacorps all over Cyberpunk? And I say Cyberpunk the genre, not the not just this setting. Sorry, I gotta get rid of a bot. And I also want to have a sip of coffee. So I don't love the fact that there's they're going to be facing the door like that. Then again, I don't love the fact that if I try this angle, there's a bunch of people looking at me. All right, that wasn't a disaster. Uh, 557A. Okay, so 2 1Cs, then a 7A. I should have thought a little more carefully, but I'm committed now. So 55, yeah, there's no 7A for me to work with there, so... I may have had the opportunity to do all three, but not unless I work at all. Of course. Should still be able to make it work. Okay, that actually wouldn't have been as bad as all that. Archive conversation, Minho and Iman. Good, what's up? Fuck all, still sitting in the shrine. It's fucking 6 already. What are they talking about for so fucking long? Compassion and shit? Maybe we hit the city soon as they let you off. Fuck that. I'm hitting the road, hitting a dram, and then hitting the sack. I heard Jotoro's got new girls, and they're no joke. Hold on, Flick you still by email. Oh man, reeled me in. Sleep when I die. Knew you'd see the light, Choom. Let me know when you're good and I'll pick you up. Sure, thanks. Okay, so that will hopefully simplify things for me. CCTV analysis. Heavy traffic, but all's normal. No suspicious activity. The Honda is clear. Meeting can take place. Just gonna see if I can get a little bit more performance. Sometimes switching between the map helps refocus the game's attention. Okay, so I don't see any benefit to going into that room. And looks like this gentleman's not paying attention. Algrins, how you doing? Okay, 1Cs. Seems like I should be able to do it, but I don't think I can. If I do 1C, excuse me, 1C, 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 I can get myself another 1C. But that sort of, that just takes up another spot. So we could do 1C, 1C, but I need a third 1C, and there's none here. If I do the 1C here, again, I don't have an E9. But you know what? Let's just go nuts. That's about in games myself, watching you peel the onion of another bad guy base. Nice way of putting it. What game are you playing, Algins? It's funny, I get to occasionally run into you in like a chat, but I don't always, I almost never know what you're playing. I think the window's closing on this opportunity. Oh. This is not a great spot to be in. So the original sin was trying to chase down that that one Tiger Claw. I should have just let them go and worried about this guy. But we don't seem to have triggered any alarms yet, and the game just tabbed out. Minecraft Steampunk LPS mod pack. One of those ridiculous ones with tons of stuff to learn. I've played very little Minecraft. I want to, but I've not put enough time into it. But I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of the extent of the modding. I mean, obviously I know the point of that game is to be able to customize a bunch of stuff, but I didn't appreciate the modding was that big. I do also find it very funny that I am surprised to find out certain things about Minecraft while I constantly talk about how I feel that Roblox is consistently underestimated in terms of its influence on games. But there you have it. I have my biases. I don't think... Oh yeah, no, there are multiple E9s. 1C BD... Neither of these will get me to an FF, though. Mods are insanity. The pack is focused on the crate mod, which uses cogs and steam powers to create factories and contraptions. It is actually kind of funny if you think about it that, you know, I don't think the entire factory style game owes its existence to Minecraft, but I think it would be fair to say that we probably wouldn't see nearly as many of them if Minecraft wasn't, the success that it was. There is a side of me that wants to just system collapse that guy, but it adds a factor that I don't have control over. I think if I just keep my cool. Yeah. But yeah, like, so Factorios and, even this War of Mine, I feel to a certain extent that those took the form that they did because everybody sort of realized not just that you could make this type of game, and obviously Minecraft was inspired by Infiniminer. I don't want to say that just kind of came perfectly formed out of nowhere. But it is kind of funny that, we do now have this sort of factory style of game, and I think to a certain extent owing to the popularity of Minecraft. And the answer now is to actually have Minecraft become more like these factory style games. It's a complication of like 300 some odd mods that someone made work together and put in a downloaded package, through CurseForge with a one-click install. CurseForge makes grabbing mod packs easy. So I play with a bunch until I find a set that I like. This one has quests, adds bosses, and gives you rewards for doing stuff, so it's kind of guided. I actually quite like that idea, because one of the things that I've struggled with for those types of games, I like the idea of being open and being able to sort of express yourself. I like games that encourage creativity, but I do still treat those games like games. So I do tend to benefit when there's a bit of instruction or guidance. So, for example, this War of Mine has, a very clear expectation of survival, as any of those games do, but, survival in very specific forms. So, like, if you're not going out trying to acquire some specific things that are aligned with, really Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you think about it, then you're not going to do well, and it is obvious that you're not going to do well. Whereas some of the games, I tend to find that they want to let you discover, which I think can be a good thing, but it is also maybe clear that they've been spending a lot of time with their own game's logic and maybe not so much time thinking about when someone who isn't familiar with the game thinks when they're first encountering it. And those ones I tend to struggle a little bit with. So I do tend to like it when they give you, a few, even just a couple of quests to say, hey, here's how you build a cog. Why do you think cogs are important? Here's something, here's this idea of making intermediate steps so that you can make this bigger thing. And then, you don't have to bring it home in the sense of like, and now here's the tank mission. Now you know how to build tanks. Like, maybe learning how to build a tank on your own can be the fun that you have playing those games yourself. But I sort of feel like being able to teach people how to build the primitives and introducing the idea that you are in fact encouraged to do these things. It's a little bit like how I talk about Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop, actually, where Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop does a really nice job of letting you know that screwing up is part of the job and that it's actually kind of fun. You get to appreciate some of the humor of the game if you do that. So I think being able to get those lessons across can be the difference between whether or not I get into one of those kinds of games or not. All right. Teachings of the Temple excerpts. The welcome truth that sleep and death are twin sisters, beneficent, healing, and vivifying, is gradually making its way through the scientific as well as the religious world, bearing on its Wino's faith and trust in the fundamental lays of life which underlie all phenomena, and casting down forever the great Moloch of fear that stands at the gate of all men's minds, ready to devour each child of hope which has been conceived and born in the joy of life. Time and space are annihilated in dream life because of the rapid action of the energy of mind when freed from bonds of matter, And life in a state of dream is a foretaste of what life may be when the coarser grades of matter, which now hold the embryonic God-man in bondage, are refined, and the energy which now must act under all the difficulties man has ignorantly thrown up by unnatural, unwise methods and practices. Through countless incarnations, we will then be guided and controlled by the higher or spiritual will of man, for the perfecting of a body as much superior to the bodies of the present races of mankind as the latter are superior to those of the animal creation. You find yourself lacking motivation to play open-ended games like Minecraft or The Sims. Maybe I'm not creative enough for them. I don't think that's entirely true, Jamie. I will say I really like The Sims. But the thing is, I also feel that The Sims can at least give you a bit of guidance. So, you know, like in general, you know, I don't know, like you want to buy certain things, so you know, you try to advance in your career. The reason why I say I don't think it's a question of creativity. I don't make the beautiful houses that other people do. That's one thing I actually kind of struggle with for The Sims. But in general, I actually have liked... The Sims is one of those things that I'm surprised how much I like it, but I'm pleasantly surprised. I also think, I don't know, would you extend that feeling to, say, like City Skylines or like City Builders? Because I think to a certain extent, sometimes it's just a question of scale, that once you get to a certain level, people enjoy them a little bit more, like a certain level of abstraction, I guess. Membership card. Shinto Shrine, Milagro Terrace, status expired. To renew your card, please resume dues payments. And Under One Among says, it's much clearer what you can do in The Sims than in Minecraft, even if it's equally unclear what you should do. Yeah, and actually that's a really good way of pointing it, because of course there is sort of the paralysis that you feel in terms of just having too many decisions in front of you. So, you know, and I tend to find, I suspect my Sims life is actually very much like my own life, where, you know, I almost always wind up having my Sims spending way too much time reading books and like trying to improve their skills. I do actually kind of wish that working out worked a little bit like it does in The Sims, because at least for like my Sims, I can like, first of all, they actually have a weight machine, but you know, you just like push the button and sure, like some of the stats for the Sim go down. But you know, I don't feel the pain that my Sim does, so they can actually be fit in a way that I'm probably not. But no, actually, I think that's a really good way of sort of dividing that down. Like in terms of Minecraft, you know, you have maybe some immediate concerns in terms of like making sure your health bar is as high as it can be, and that like your food bar doesn't go down too far. But in the case of The Sims, like you know, your own interests will drive you in terms of what kind of career path you want to take. But yeah, there is so much that you can do, that it can actually be one of those points where it's like, well, I don't know, like when I'm playing Mario, I know move to the right of the screen. why are you putting this on me? I just want to play the game, damn it. Yeah, no, I sympathize a lot with that, Jamie.
You entered and left like a ghost, V. Nobody at the shrine even knew of your presence. Excellent work, closing the contract and making the transfer.
I will say, Algrins, I don't know, like this is going to sound like the worst kind of self-help nonsense possible. One more thing. You performed the task with flying colors and surpassed my expectations. You will find my additional reward at the drop point. You would actually be surprised how far, like, sitting down and forcing yourself to do the thing helps. And, like, especially learning can be tough because, I don't know about you, but, like, I do a very bad job of keeping track of my own personal progress on things. So, you know, like, I'm me, right? I've been me the whole time, you know? So I had my performance review a couple weeks ago at work. And,
Hey, what's up?
you know, for me, it's like, well, yeah, you know, I'm me. Of course I know how to do this, you know? I was exactly the same person I was when I started. Well, that's clearly not true. Like, I was starting a type of work which I've never actually done before at this position. Like, there are obviously qualities that made me attractive enough to be the one who got hired. It's not like they took just anybody off the street, but it would be fair to say that there is sort of an unknown factor and that there's a lot of work that I needed to do to get to a point where I was an effective contributor on a team. But I couldn't tell you, like, okay, it was on this day that I became, you know, an effective contributor to the team. And I think that's true for a lot of things that you can do in life. But I will actually say that there's a couple of comparable cases for me where I would say it can, like, there's clearly some kind of progress or even regress in some cases. And the only way I've really been able to, like, it's really just sort of been an intuition and, like, getting enough time to sort of realize that there's been an improvement or a change for me to be able to say that. So I'm kind of dancing around the issue here, but one good example I can give out of this is, like, reading long and difficult books. For me, it is something that I feel that I did better a few years ago than I necessarily do now. And one of the reasons I say that is, like, I remember there was a time when I would go, and, you know, like, I'd gotten a library card. It was the first library card when I was, like, you know, living out on my own. And I went to the philosophy section and, you know, I just started reading books, like, voluntarily read Immanuel Kant on my own, you know, in extended periods, you know, because I was interested in it. And, you know, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely convinced that that's something that I could do now. I think I could get through it clearly, but I'm not entirely sure I'm not entirely sure I'd be able to give it the same sort of focused attention that I did. And admittedly, one of the reasons I got a library card was because my music player broke, and I was like, I had rent money and that was about it. So I didn't have as many distractions. I didn't have any computer to play. I had a computer, but it wasn't one equipped to play games. So that also probably had something to do with it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's one of these things where I've kind of recognized, this was a while ago, actually. I kind of recognized that it was not as easy for me to sit down and, like, make the time and really engage with the type of reading that I maybe had in the past. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't reading, but I would say that I was probably reading more articles. So I have a few subscriptions now that I read on a somewhat regular basis. And then, of course, there's the reading that I do for work. But, you know, there's a few things. So I've been trying to do a bit more fiction lately. This is why I'm talking about things like Foundation and Dune. I've been, you know, and I've also been trying to make sure that I'm reading outside of things that are directly relevant to work, or even, like, things that are quote unquote productivity. So, you know, I like reading books on programming, but I won't necessarily count that as, like, I need to make sure that that's offset with other types of reading. So, but what I've definitely found, though, is that the more I say to myself, oh, you know, I've got, you know, TikTok brain or whatever, that doesn't help anything. In fact, just focusing on that often just makes it worse. But what I have found is when I say, it's like, well, do I want to be the sort of person who says that, you know, oh, I just don't have the attention span to read Don Quixote or something? It's It's like, no, that sounds like a horrible way to live your life. So like, I don't know, I got sufficiently mad at myself for even allowing myself to think that way that I just sort of said, okay, well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read this thing and, we'll see what happens. And, obviously there's going to be times where I'll get distracted or whatever. So those, it's actually a little bit like how I've heard people describe meditation, although I'm not really someone in a position to speak intelligently about meditation. But essentially that idea of sort of recognizing, recognizing the distraction, and it's like, not just, it's, getting to that point where I'm like, okay, it's, reading is more than just moving my eyes across the page. What specifically do I know out of what I've just read? This, if I go back to a previous line, right? Do I understand why this, this particular line was the, like what came before it? Why is it necessary that this be the next step in the story, as an example? And, in some cases it can be a little frustrating, right? Because you're sort of admitting, if your ideal is to be the sort of person who like sits down and reads, I don't know, like Infinite Jest in a single sitting and has like a comprehensive understanding of it, it's going to feel like you're kind of admitting failure to go through an exercise like that. But of course, that's probably not the way you do want to think about it. What you kind of want to do is to recognize, is like, okay, so there is value in identifying, the mistake. Let's go back. I'm reading this thing for a reason, right? I want to. I mean, it depends on what you're reading too, right? Like maybe you want to read something, like maybe you're reading Republic because, you want to be someone who has read, Plato's Republic at least once in your life. That's for one reason or another, that was the motivating factor. And, just cling on to that as long as that is a priority for you, you stick with it. Usually we have reasons like, this seemed like an interesting story, and as long as you're able to continue to say, this seems like an interesting story and I'd like to see where it goes, that can be sort of reason enough. But yeah, I've tended to find that, like, as much as I want to imagine that there's some, magic book that you can read, or some, life hack that will turn you into a reader, or will turn you into someone who finds it easy to sort of have these long extended times where you're purely focused on a single text. It is really something that can be practiced, and being willing to sort of acknowledge the slip-ups while also just nice enough to yourself that you don't turn it into like just this, this constant drumbeat of like, you're a screw up. To me, that's really the only way I've been able to sort of keep myself on track. Although I would say I probably have less of a concern that I'm underdoing my reading than I used to. I think limitations in games, that's why you've been obsessed with. You think you like limitations in games, that's why you've been obsessed with Magic lately. I actually should play more Magic. I do actually. It's funny that you mentioned decision paralysis, because one of the things that keeps me from doing deck builders more is the fact that, like, I've never liked it when the expectation is that you're going to read guides to build an ideal deck, or to go through a game or whatever. I like working that stuff out for myself. I kind of understand that a lot of games do take wikis and things like that for granted, but I've never quite been able to get on board with it. I'm old-fashioned that way. I do remember to your other point, Algorithms, I did, there was a kind of a clear, you've learned all of Westbrook's secrets and completed all of my contracts, dear. You've made a name for yourself around here. I'd like to honor you by giving you a special weapon. You will find it in your stash. Good work, V. All right, let's pick up the goodies. But yeah, I remember I had a chat with someone kind of senior at work, and the conversation definitely turned to the like, so, you know, kind of where do you want to go with all of this? You know, have you thought about, like, you know, being, you know, like leading a team or what? And I don't know, I kind of have to fall back to the, you know, the old Plato line about, you know, the one best suited to leadership is the one who doesn't seek it. But, you know, on the other hand, you know, you can potentially be fated to be ruled by someone inappropriate for the role if you don't take it up. But like, you know, it's nice when you're talking to someone senior, and you can sort of say, it's like, you know, I don't know, I really like the fact that there's a whole lot of nonsense I don't need to deal with because you're good at your job. So for myself, I do actually know from other jobs that I've had, while I've never really had like a formal management title, I do actually know, listen, that's on you, buddy. But yeah, I do know that I have some capability, but my stat sheet has like greater than 0 for some kind of management capability. But I'm not entirely sure it's the thing I can excel at. And I think one of the big things I've been reflecting on a little bit more is the work that I'm most satisfied with are the things where I can sort of say, like, I absolutely killed it today. Like, I know that there are few people in the world who could have done as good of a job as I could have on this thing. I mean, that's like a really hyperbolic version of that. Like, obviously, I'm not I don't need a job that has me being an egomaniac every single day. But, you know, just being able to say that, you know, I am sort of doing as much as I can. I'm using as broad of a range of my capabilities, or, you know, I just did, you know, I gave 100% at something. The work challenged me. There's a few different ways that you can sort of line it up, but I do actually kind of value that more. That's definitely the type of work where I've always felt the most satisfied. And as a result, it's one of these ones where, you know, moving up to some sort of like supervisor or manager role can often be, you know, that can be a really clear and direct way to advance, but it's definitely a point where I would need to say, is that in line with the, like, is that something that I grow into? Is that something where I can say, yeah, I'm fulfilling this, like, I feel fulfilled because I know I did something really great today. Or would it be one, is it like the Peter principle, basically, where I've sort of now been risen to this level where I'm not that competent? Glad it's looking up for you. All right, so there should be a goodie waiting for me here somewhere. Yako. I do wonder what determines what winds up on the shelves here, because, like, I obviously have more stuff in the No, that's fine. I don't. I mean, obviously, if people want to chat, I don't feel that people don't think they can contribute to chat while you're talking about work. Especially if I recall correctly, I think the last time we talked about your workplace, you were planning on quitting. Yeah, I will actually say, just to the topics people were previously talking about. I am, like I said, I was kind of intrigued that at Jamie's perspective, just because it's sort of funny to me that I'll like look at Magic the Gathering and say, yeah, I wish I did more of this, but I just don't know how I'd sit down and work out my deck. Whereas I imagine Jamie would like, but I'll sit down and play The Sims. Whereas I imagine Jamie would sit down and say, it's like, yeah, I kind of wish I liked The Sims more than I do, but really, Magic the Gathering and its limitations are where it's at for me. And to a certain extent, we're both talking about the same sort of challenge we have with a certain type of game, and yet our example of the game that's maybe a bridge too far for us are like polar opposites. Which is fine. I mean, that's why we have the variety that we do. It's a wonderful thing that we do have the breadth of games that we do. But it is always just kind of funny how I can describe a game a certain way and have it be like, yeah, this is like one of the best games. And then somebody will turn around and is like, that sounds like the worst game ever. Which is obviously not, I don't mean to suggest that Jamie was saying that The Sims was the worst game ever. Just, it's... I find it a fun example how the qualities that you think actually make it stand out can be the very same ones that people consider an example of something that they can't get a handle on. For sure. I mean, it's one of the things I appreciate about the chat. I do kind of like hearing other perspectives on things. I realize, like, obviously as the broadcaster, the expectation is that I have something to say at any given time. I do always find it funny. Like, I did want to check out a couple of Doom the Dark Ages streams. Just because, I'm assuming my system can run it, I just don't know how well it can run it. And it was kind of telling, because I tried 3, and like I just went for the Twitch recommendations, right? So it's ones with thousands of people inside of them. And the first 3 that I visited were in menus, or they were talking. They actually didn't do any gameplay for the time that I was there. And it was actually finally, I noticed Elkanu went live, and he was streaming Doom the Dark Ages. So it actually took me watching Elkanu, who's a French broadcaster that I quite like, to finally see some Doom the Dark Ages gameplay. And I point that out largely because I realize, like, I don't think anybody... Like, this shouldn't really require any sort of say. I shouldn't need to say this, but I don't think nobody owes me their view. I don't think anybody who doesn't like the stream should watch it, frankly. What I have noticed, though, is that people are definitely quite free in their comments of, just shut up and play the game, or stop wasting people's time, especially on some of the YouTube stuff. And you definitely don't see that on the large streams doing that. Like maybe it's just they, it could be that they just have a large team of mods, and that sort of thing is, it's just obvious you'll be taken out if you say that. But it was kind of interesting to just sort of see. I've always sort of taken a perspective that yes, I do less gameplay, and that's just kind of the game is ultimately the motivator for some of the conversations that we have, and that I guess really what people are getting out of it is what they would get out of a podcast. So I obviously screwed up in terms of the roads. Like I've come to terms with it, right? Like obviously I want to I want to appeal to the people who will show up, not this group of people who seem rather unpleasant and I probably wouldn't want to have inside of the stream if given my choice. But there's just sort of this conception that you have of yourself. I don't always watch a lot of streams, and so I just kind of accepted that all right, I talk more or have less game content than an average stream or whatever. But again, like major new release, a few of these people who probably have a key from Microsoft, and obviously a sensible choice on Microsoft's part, because these are very, very large and successful streams. But it took me going to someone with a smaller audience to actually see the game being played. So certainly I am going to have less patience for someone telling me just to start playing the game, having seen how it works on big channels. I don't know if I can do witty, but I feel like I don't know. In general, I've tried to allow. I don't want extended silence, but I've tried to allow. Wow, I've really messed this up. Yeah, I've tried to allow bits of silence come in, just because I have heard from a couple of people that you don't need to talk constantly. I'm not entirely sure if that's true or not, right? Because again, it's individual preferences, may or may not work. But spent a lot of time I'm tuned into the stream, not looking at the screen, except Roach Racer. Got to see all of that. You reminded me. I need to play some more Roach Racer. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just one of these things where the more I actually look at what's succeeding on Twitch, the less I can clearly articulate what works and what doesn't. Like, there are massive streams that get away doing things that people would say, are a death sentence for smaller streams. All right. Anyways, let's.
A serious gig, which means I'll be needing a serious merc. Want you to hop to 6th Street turf and graft a virus onto their tech. Counting on you, champ. Oh, and one last thing. There's this techie, Lucius Thornen. I wouldn't mind if he got a piece of lead to the skull. You dig? Good. Specs attached.
Agent Saboteur infects 6th Street computer with a virus. 6th Street hideout on MLK Boulevard. Those boys and girls from 6th Street think they've got wicked smarts, that they can jump a Militech transport in my hood without me knowing about it. They think they can crack corpo weapons and tip the balance of power in the city to their favor. It's time they got a rude awakening. I'll snap you the location of the 6th Street hideout and the door code. Job simple. Find a way in, look for the comp they used to jailbreak corpo... jailbreak Corpotech, upload the virus I'll supply you, and voila, their fancy new weapon melts into sparkling new slag heap. One more thing. If you happen to find a Lucius Thorin, do me a favor and make his ass disappear, will ya? Thorin's a techie, came up with this gonk plan, which makes him a real thorn in my ass. Pun intended. Stay safe and have fun. Sorry, folks, I just need dog food, so I'm going to evaluate the brands for a bit. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's... I think there's a really easy way for these kinds of conversations to turn into, you know, I'm mad I'm not bigger, and, you know, people's tastes are shit, so, you know, that's why, like, you definitely see it whenever there's like a style of stream or whatever that becomes popular, so like VTubers or whatever. And, you know, I obviously defining an outgroup is like a cheat code for building quote-unquote community, but I really don't know if you want to actually build a community out of hating stuff. So I try to avoid that as much. Like, clearly I'm not above sort of talking about negative aspects of things or things where I think it's falling short. But I personally think that there is a difference. I actually really appreciated this about the local game dev community. Like, I think there is a difference between just hating on something and being able to articulate, you know, how we can do better. So, for instance, I remember this one. It turned into a bit of a shootout last time I did this, so we'll see if I can be slightly more effective. I mean, I won't say no if I just get a chance to kill a bunch of people, but... but yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there's a way of talking about this stuff which allows you to kind of understand the subject better, and that can sometimes mean talking about where it's falling short. But I also think that there's a meaningful difference between that and just, you know, isn't it terrible that this big old group of idiots is being a big old group of idiots? Man, I'm really mad that these people are being a bunch of idiots. Like, it's the same thing over and over again. I think once you've said it once, I'm not entirely sure if there's any information transfer in terms of saying it again. And I definitely understand that that is a popular style of content. I cannot tell you how many, you know, modern Star Wars is a cinematic disaster or you know, whatever. And it's, you know, it's basically, you know, oh, you clicked on a Jordan Peterson video once? Well, have we got something for you? And like, then basically it's just that stuff, and people hating on Star Wars will be the only thing that you see for the next few years. Like, it works for people, right? There are people who are able to build fairly successful careers out of it. And it's, more importantly, I think a big factor about this sort of stuff is that it is content, you know, using that term in the loosest possible meaning, in my opinion. It's the sort of thing that is very, very easy to make, right? It's something that requires very little effort. There's constant demand for it, it feels like, and all right, I think I'm safe. You know, like, because you know the party line, you know, you really just need to put a little bit of a rhetorical spin on the latest iteration of that, and you're golden. Whereas doing, you know, some sort of, you know, equivalent to an Atlantic article or something like that, that's hard, right? You do need to exercise some thought, and you do need to, you know, you do need to spend some time coming up with an original perspective. And, you know, just because something's original doesn't necessarily mean it's good. So, again, it's not maybe a mystery to me that sort of stuff works out, but I also, I don't know, this is going to sound like really cheesy, but these don't strike me as very happy people, right? Like, I don't know. I don't find the goal of becoming an influencer to be so, like, okay, so first of all, it sort of does violence to the term influencer, right? Like, are these, if there is influence, I question whether or not these are people who are influencing so much as these are people being captured by their own audiences. But at least to the qualities that I associate with a fulfilling life, and, you know, I'll maybe acknowledge that I'm not a model life for anyone. I may not, you know, I may be in the wrong role here in terms of talking about these things, but insofar as I think I have an understanding of qualities that are in line with a fulfilling life, there are not a lot of those qualities on display in the, you know, in those kinds of streams. So again, I'm not going to sort of peer into the soul of the angry YouTuber and understand exactly, you know, their struggle, but you know, I don't know, like, insofar as these people are like trying to sell me on a worldview, it's not really a worldview that strikes me as one that leads to fulfilling life. So yeah, I mean, with that in mind, right, like, it's just one of these things where I say, it's like, okay, it's a, you know, it's an easy type of content to make. It doesn't mean that it's a guarantee to be successful. I think there are actually very few obvious paths to success in terms of this sort of stuff. But, oh crap, I'm stuck too. That's a shame, we were so close to a fully stealth. Time to clear out Lyle McClintock, Ryder Kent. Ryder, the NCPD just announced that your street has been put on red alert. There's some kind of shootout. Pack whatever you can't live without, and come to mine before 6th Street pays you a visit. If things get really dicey, you can call. I can call you Delamain. Let me know. Stay sharp. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just one of these things where I don't. First of all, I don't really think the whole being an influencer thing is actually that important of a life goal. For some people, it is, right? And with that in mind, you do need to put some thought into what people are going to watch and be interested in. And then I guess the second part to that is, in terms of chasing what's popular, being able to sort of clearly define, I think he's the goal. Theseus Turret 4, Moth Drone RHT-1 4, Basilisk Stinger Launcher 1, Saratoga SMG 10, Ajax M25 1s 5. Yeah, I don't know, just being able to stay sort of true enough to the things that you're interested in. Like, I can tell you, I don't really associate with these people anymore, but I did know someone who was a streamer for a pretty popular game, and they tried to venture out from that type of game, and people stopped watching. Like, they only wanted to watch him for that one style of game. And near the end, at least in terms of as far as I knew them, they genuinely hated that game. Like, any love that they had that they originally sort of put into playing that's gone. Like, they're doing it because if they don't do it, they need to find a new way to make a living. So, it's definitely very tricky to navigate. And then I think the last thing that probably doesn't get talked about enough out of this is that there is just a sheer degree of luck, right? I don't know, like, Grand Theft Auto 5 was a very old game around the time that Grand Theft Auto roleplay became a thing. And one of the big streamers that came out of that was Sheriff Eli. And, Sheriff Eli doesn't do Grand Theft Auto roleplay anymore, but I'd say is a pretty successful Twitch streamer. So, like, I don't know if you can really predict the kinds of waves that lead to these careers being launched. I definitely think that there are people who are better at capitalizing on an opportunity. So you can kind of imagine how, Cultist Simulator becoming a popular thing. If I was a better streamer, that could potentially be sort of an origin story for a broadcasting career. Now, again, this is not my I could have been a contender moment. I'm perfectly happy to keep this as a hobby. But it is worth noting, like, you really don't know what's going to catch on. And that doesn't mean that the people who have made it aren't without talent. Like, I think it's a mistake to try and think. I think it's the sort of stuff that makes Malcolm Gladwell sell a lot of books, but I think is completely inconsistent with real life to just sort of say that it's pure random chance that people find the success that they do. But again, it's one of these ones where I know I've talked about it before, but like the idea that you can define a fandom around hating on something, you'll find a lot of people who agree with you. You'll find a lot of people who, at least on the surface, seem to be aligned. But I don't know, it's a little bit, this is going to sound weird, but it's almost kind of like what you sometimes hear with dating advice. Like, if you're somebody, obviously me, I'm irresistible and have never had this problem. But like, how there'll be like somebody who's, I don't know, like maybe they'll be on like Reddit or something like that. And they're like, I can't get a girlfriend or whatever. And it's always the same advice, right? Like, don't seem desperate, have your own interesting qualities and so on and so forth. Like, there's basically just a subset of advice that people always give in that situation. And I actually think it's not that different when you start thinking about communities, right? So on the surface level, it can seem like a bunch of people mad about something, Woken Games or, Warhammer 40K, it was way better in the previous edition than the current one, or, CD Projekt Red embarrassed themselves, or BioWare sucks now, or, there's no shortage of these kinds of movements. But the thing that's kind of keeping them together, once you get past the thing that they're mad about, is just this sense of community that's been built. But it's kind of this community that's almost built around this desperation to be involved in a group. And that's not really enough to sort of sustain these long-term or interesting connections. Whereas I imagine, a bunch of people who really love playing Minecraft, I can sort of see probably being a group that, winds up playing maybe not even the same game, but like they play games for decades together because they all just really liked that thing about Minecraft, or they really, they all worked together on this really big accomplish it. And like maybe that'll be the peak of their gaming life. Like maybe there'll be never be another moment that's as good as that to them. But there's sort of a bond that's been created because it's constructive as opposed to just finding another group of people to be mad about. I don't know though. Desperation to be involved in a group holds cults together. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's definitely a set of there's just a set of tricks that have worked since like ancient times, right? Secret knowledge, right? This whole intellectual dark web stuff is all about secret knowledge. It's it's the mysteries, right? So it's I mean, credit to it. It's an effective playbook. we keep doing this over and over again. But yeah, you have your secret club handshakes. It's the Stonecutters who rigs every Oscar night. But yeah. But then, you have another group, like, sometimes it can be really, like, some of it gets just batty, right? Like, if you ever visit the Warhammer 40, the Warhammer 40K subreddit, like, any article is going to be about 10 times longer than any sane human will want to know about that subject. You kind of, I guess to a certain extent, I kind of admire the passion behind it, but even that is, like, too much for me. And I don't even dislike the Warhammer 40K setting. I actually, I think it's a neat setting. It's definitely made a lot of really good games. Maybe also some not so good games, but let's focus on the good ones. But yeah, I don't know. It's I'll take that. I'll take someone who like maybe has hygiene problems and is over enthusiastic about Warhammer 40K over somebody who's just like mad at the world and sort of thinks that they've got that one secret that the government's just holding from them. I don't know, maybe this is just because of some of the the groups that I've hung around with, but like I get so tired hearing people spouting conspiracy stuff on the internet, all talking about how they're independent thinkers in the exact same way. It's just a level of yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a level of delusion that I really can't get around. Or maybe I'm just so deluded myself that I don't see it for my I don't see my own issues on that. But there's just a certain point where I'm like, surely you can step outside yourself and see the problem here, but I can't. Anyways, The Max Tack Way by Matthias Maddox. Forward to the second edition. I was fortunate after publishing the first edition of this book to meet many people with fascinating stories. I spoke with people who lost loved ones at the hands of cyberpsychos. I met the relatives of people whom I shot. Needless to say, not every conversation ended on good terms. After some time, I learned what questions to expect from my readers. Have you ever been shot? Yes, and I've lost count. Who was the most difficult person to kill and arrest? The 2063 Golden Springs Mall Killer, more titanium bone and synth skin than man. What causes cyberpsychosis? I'll let you know when I find out. Then at a book signing in Haywood, I was asked a question I'd never heard before. Is there anything that keeps me awake at night? After a moment's reflection, I realized the answer was yes. Perhaps most surprisingly, however, it was not nightmares of eviscerated cyberpsycho victims, nor the shrieks and cries of my squad mates as they burned alive. Cruel as it may sound, I grew used to that. It was part of the job. No, what caused my heart to pound as I lie in bed late at night is the thought that one day I too could succumb to cyberpsychosis. The amount of cyberware I have incorporated into my body is substantial, far more than most. I tried to drown the human parts of me that fear, that doubt. I am aware just how fragile my humanity is, that piece of myself deep within that makes me who I am. One poorly clipped neuron, one hormonal overdose, and that piece may disappear forever, leaving behind an automaton who has only one desire, to kill. In truth, I forced my mind to race so I would not have to confront these thoughts. Today I still struggle with these demons, but I've asked my wife to keep a loaded pistol in her bedside table. If I begin to scream or rant incoherently in the middle of the night, I instructed her to empty the entire clip between my eyes. At first she objected, but our love is strong. It is thanks to my loving wife's promise that I sleep more soundly now than ever before in my life. By the way, there was one point I was going to make before, which had nothing to do with jerks on the internet. I think I may have talked about this before, but there's another Cyberpunk setting, Shadowrun, and this is by FASA, the people who made BattleTech. And I think I've talked about this before, but I've got a lot of respect for a game called Starflight. And what I didn't realize when I originally played it, that there was a Sega Genesis adaptation of Starflight, which is sort of my first exposure to that game. And then there was a Sega Genesis adaptation of Shadowrun, which was distinct from the SNES one. How you doing, Vanguard Master? I didn't realize it was Victoria Day on Monday. Yeah, no worries. I don't take attendance. It was kind of funny. Diluted Daybreak today mentioned that, you know, we kind of keep missing each other on stream, and I kind of felt like I had to come clean that it was like, I have actually occasionally stopped by the stream, but like, I don't know if I can stay long enough. So I didn't say hi just so that, you know, she didn't reply or ask a question and then I wasn't there anymore. But yeah, I'm always happy to have somebody stop by, however long it is. But anyways, yeah, so I was caught, again, probably caught more so by the Starflight adaptation, just because when I did finally look up Starflight for myself, I saw somebody play it originally, and like it really just left this impression that like stayed with me, and I really wanted to play it. And then I played the PC version. I'm like, what the hell? Like, why isn't this like the thing that I saw before? And it turns out that they did this nice graphical overhaul. But the reason why I bring it up is that the Shadowrun adaptation was made after Starflight, and I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like they learned something about sort of quest design and sort of how to make a game. Like, they'd made games before, but like I feel like the developers learned something through adapting Starflight, because you can't do a straight line from things in Starflight to the Shadowrun game. But there's just sort of this very distinct connection and sort of structure to the game that I thought was really interesting. And I've kind of wanted to find a way to play. The only way I know how to play it is by like the only how do I put this? Like the only way I know how to play this is through an emulator, and it's not one of those Genesis ones that came up on Nintendo. I don't know, but I think it's on archive.org. And hello, Serving Donner. I'm not sure what you mean by J.J. Abrams. But yeah, anyways, I was really struck, like, I thought the cyberspace part was kind of cool for it too. I don't think it's called cyberspace in Shadowrun. I think is it the Matrix? Anyways, whatever it is. I thought the hacking stuff looked pretty cool. But yeah, it's kind of funny because I often talk about Starflight in relation to Mass Effect, both in terms of the things that they successfully adapted, but things that they obviously were inspired by Starflight and they weren't able to fully incorporate in the game. I actually think a lot of the things that people like to trash Andromeda for represent cases where they tried to capture something from Starflight and couldn't quite deliver. But seeing the Shadowrun adaptation just shortly after Starflight really is probably one of the clearest examples, to me at least, of a developer kind of learning a new trick by adapting somebody else's game. All right, dear Ryder Kent, due to heightened gang activity in your neighborhood, All Foods Delivery is canceling its services to your area. You may collect your goods at any of our stores. Any subsequent orders made from your current address will not be accepted. In the future, please consider changing your place of residence. We wish you a pleasant weekend, AFD team. And you are a winner. Greetings, user. Due to your continued use of Kenoshi services, you are entered in a raffle and have been selected for one prize, Kenoshi Thermosense 9873. Reply to this email in the next 10 minutes to claim your prize. Hurry now or another lucky user will be seeing the world in thermovision instead of you, the Kenoshi team. Okay, 2 E9s, a 1C, and an FF. Didn't really think about how I would deliver. So an FF, 1C, E9. Oh, I screwed it up. All right. Well, what you need to do, Vanguard Master, is you need to respond to those Nigerian prince emails. And don't ask them directly. See if you can figure out their secrets and then report back to us. All right, I didn't plan this out very well, but let's see if I can turn that into, yeah. Yeah, well, you need to learn home row, so it takes you less than 10 minutes to reply. Boring conversation anyway.
Flank attack! I'll take care of it. Don't give up!
Who are you saying that to? Oh, for heaven's sake.
However, in an abundance of caution, the NCPD has raised the threat level to 2, advising travelers to avoid side roads.
Actually, one funny thing, now that I think of it, there hasn't been a Shadowrun adaptation since the EA one, has there been? At least I think it was EA. Which is also a little unusual, because I would be under the impression that'd be a Microsoft product now. Oh no, what am I saying? There was the Harebrained Schemes one. Sorry, I'm not thinking straight. I played and really liked the Harebrained Schemes one. Give him one of everything.
Fresh as ever, V. Sixers will think twice before sliding their gunk asses anywhere near my turf again. And that thing with Lucius Dora? Cherry on top. Contract closed.
All right, what are we up to next? I thought that said Kenoshi for a second, but all right. So we're on to Mumar. So when I say the last of the street fixers, basically Dakota will be sort of the last batch of side missions that we do. There's actually also some irony, I think, in... all right. So much the worse for you, you came after me on a bike. Another one?
Got it, country!
Anyway, what was I talking about? Jordan and Eba-chan. Fuck. What? He fucked up Thorin. Who did? And he's getting away with it. Who? Fucking follow him and flatline him. For Lucius! It's a line in Gladiator 3, right? Or 2. 3's coming. Anyway, yeah, so finishing off Mumar's quests, then going on to Dakota, at which point we can kind of mainline the main quest. The hope here is that doing so will mean, one, I get to see all the stuff in Night City that are side quests without getting locked out by the main game. But second of all, I'll probably be able to reduce the stuff that I've already seen in the main story to sort of hopefully one or two evenings of just focusing on the main game, at which point I get to see all the new goodies, but of course with the advantages that I've gained from Phantom Liberty. That's the plan, at least. Obviously, if there's something interesting for me to do in the game, I'm not married to, to sticking to that plan, but clearing out the side quests seems like not a bad plan.
Yo, V, been living good? If you ain't busy, I got a gig for you. Real classic. All you gotta do is break into a corpo zone and plan a bug. Info's attached.
All right, Agent Saboteur, objective delivery. Oh yeah, I also need to find Roach Racer arcade. It'd be wrong if I didn't do at least one round of that. Agent Saboteur, objective delivery van, or deliver van. Kendachi Factory, Arroyo. You ever watch the news? Personally, I think it's all propaganda, but that's just me. Still, people watch, and some people make the news. My client's Ted Fox, an N54 reporter. He's doing a story on the link between gangs and corps. On paper, they're enemies, but in reality, seems like the corporats and gangoons are scratching each other's backs. Keyword, seems. Ted needs hard evidence. That's where you come in to save the day. Ted'll tell you exactly what you have to do, but be ready to get out onto Kendachi Factory grounds, poke around. All clear? Head over to Ted. As they say in the media biz, it's showtime. Oh, that's right. I think I meet Ted in Yeah, that's right.
You know my price.
V,
One and only. You Ted?
call me Teddy. Get in. I'll give you the brief.
Fine, Teddy. What's the sitch?
See that garage on the left? Belongs to Kendachi. Tip came in, they've got some special goods sitting in there.
Special?
For the 6th Street gang.
Kendachi and the gang are in cahoots. Who cares?
Who cares? Jesus, what has this world come to? Listen, on one side, you've got the Patriots. Real salt of the earth, ex-military, Second Amendment nuts. And on the other, Kendachi. Clean, pure as snow, megacorp, ideology and race-wise. Shady dealing between the two? That's a story.
I get it. You want a scandal.
I want the truth. Period. Especially if it's inconvenient.
You can't handle the truth!
Wait, you doing a piece about this?
Oh, it is gonna be huge, I am telling you. And guess who stands to gain the most?
I don't know. Who?
Public opinion if the story gets out. If it devolves into blackmail, News 54. And if it devolves further, then just little old me.
So, what's on me to do?
You get in the garage and place this tracker under the truck. Just watch out for surveillance cams.
Piece of cake.
You are making my career right here, V. The soldier of truth.
You know your way around their security?
Oh, I like you. You want deets? Teddy's got deets. Here's the deal. 2 cams, 5 guards, and another 3 in the back. Oof. Looking a little green at the gills, but hey, I get it. It won't be easy. Just do what you can to keep that mug off camera. Got it?
Sure. See what I can do. All right, Teddy. Time to get to work.
Just, do your ninja stuff. And don't get caught on camera. Cameras love me, not you. I'll be in touch.
All right, so again, I am a disaster at stealth missions. We'll do a quick autosave and then see what we can do. It would help if I went to the right building first. It hasn't said I'm in a hostile area yet, but I should probably be careful at this point. Have a good one, Jamie. I'll probably be done in about half an hour or so anyway. Alright, 1C BD is what I'm looking for here. So yeah, this is another one of those trap ones. So if we do 55, 55, I can do the 1C here, but there's no BD in this column, and there's no other 1C. So I could try and do 3 7As, but I don't have a 7A here, so I'd probably have to do something like a 7A, 7A, 1C. Yeah, let's start with that. Okay. So probably my best bet here is just to control the cameras. I will do a ping at some point, but there's only 2. I definitely thought I would be seeing more here. But I've at least got some basics to work with. Very stealthy. Alright, so this could be awkward. Oh, no, it's bathroom, so we have some privacy. So I believe it did say that there were cameras in the garage, so I should be on the lookout for those. Important Arsenal. This is a reminder that Project Arsenal is classified as top secret. If our cooperation with the 6th Street Gang goes public, our enemies will no doubt use it to their advantage. All communications must be encrypted, and all transportation of goods must take place under the cover of darkness, with few witnesses present in sparsely monitored locations. All personnel involved in this operation must be subjected to routine inspections. This probably is just a reflection of how unimportant I am in the jobs that I have, but is there such a thing as top secret in corporations? I've definitely seen, like, what is it? Like proprietary and confidential. But I think I've only, like, heard top secret in reference to, like, the cable leaks and things like that. Or there were, God, wasn't there? There was like a name for, it was like the broken Japanese ciphers, I think, had a... Okay, I'm actually mildly curious about this one now. I don't know, does anybody here work for a shady mega corporation and wants to spill some secrets? So apparently, I think it was Magic was the name. It said there were 4. Factory automation, Kendachi HQ, branch management. In accordance with the planned automation of the plant, please execute all mass termination procedures prior to the end of the quarter. Please remember, all company-issued cyberware must be recovered and all damages must be charged to the employee responsible. Preventative and active riot control measures should be doubled. Terminated employees must be required to sign a non-compete agreement that will remain in effect until 2097. Regards, Rashid Brown, Director of Personnel, Kendachi, Night City. Forever Young, Puerto Namix. Forever Young, are you in your 50s, 60s, even your 70s, but still want to look like you did in your teens? Do you crave the eternal youth of the Arasakas, but can't afford the implants? We've got a solution. 1 a day Puerto Namix will slow the effects of aging, helping you look 20 years younger. You're just 1 small capsule a day away from enjoying your natural beauty to its fullest, even into old age. Puerto is completely safe to use. Studies have shown it will to be over 95% effective. Tako Tanaka, MD. Incredible. I'm 68 years old, but I don't look a day over 40. One of our many satisfied customers. All my wife's friends constantly ask how she bagged her cougar self such a young husband. You should see her face when she tells them I'm actually old enough to be her father. Another satisfied customer. Don't bother getting an expensive new faceplate. Invest in your stunning natural beauty. Probably going fast is the right call for this one. Well, door's already closed, so...
Be a good day.
Didn't check to see if there was a door on the way out here. No. So The easy answer is just to go out how I came. Although I guess I'm not able to get back on that. Am I not able to close the window again? That guy's a little bit of a liability right now. I could probably just try and jump over the fence. But I think if I wait, he'll just turn around. Don't forget to wash.
Pre-morgue. Ted's gonna shit so hard on those Kendachi fucks. They won't know what hit him. Anyways, respect for running a tip-top op, closing the contract, and releasing your eddies.
Okay. I think we got time for one more. Yeah, we'll have a little bit more to do with Mamar, but I think probably we'll move on to Dakota and possibly finish them all off next stream. So just a reminder for anybody who's here for the stream rather than specifically Cyberpunk. I was originally... I thought I kind of knew what the next week was going to look like. But I believe the local game dev meetup is on Wednesday, and then on Monday it's a Canadian holiday, so I will likely be back next week. If I'm able / willing / up to streaming in the on the Monday, or the Monday would be the more likely of the two. I'll try and announce that on Twitter.
Hey, how's life in NC? Getting any sleep? Cause I'm not. Not when there's money to be made. So listen, one of my people, name's Juliet, was supposed to deliver me some precious data. Never made it. Getting total radio silence. Check on her, will you? And don't forget the data. Specs attached.
But yeah, so the plan is probably I will be back next Friday, a week from now. But if I do feel up to streaming on most likely the Monday, I'll try and announce that ahead of time on Twitter. And then, of course, there's the usual Twitch alerts and stuff like that. Okay, search and recover, retrieve the Zeta Tech data, Juliet Horrigan, Oz El Capitan, house on Gibson Street. I like everyone to know I'm patient, understanding. I realize there's a time for work and a time for family. Without a good work-life balance, we'd all blast our brains out. I get it, I do, but disappearing for 2 weeks because of family issues, that's how Juliet thinks of me? How much she respects me? I love her because she's ripped so much Nova data out of Zeta Tech for me, but man, she's starting to hurt my feelings, you know? Go to her place, see what her deal is. But remember, number one priority is that data she still owes me. Julia's Nova and all, but if she's got a problem with that, well, like I said, data is priority number one. I'm sorry, Jules, please forgive me for how I'm doing this. I'm nowhere near as tough as you, and I can't pretend to be anymore. I hate to say it, but there's no helping Rose anymore, so at least help yourself before it's too late. If you change your mind, I'll be waiting for you at Sunset Motel. Think on it again, please. Always yours, Sai. Test results, Rose Horrigan. Test results, HEB 12.4 GDL, HCT 42, WBC 9223 mm cube, I'm assuming. RBC 4.46 million. I don't know. I shouldn't even try to pretend that I know what these are. Comments, PLT and TSH slightly exceeded. No medical consultation is needed. However, regarding the patient's worsening state of mind, psychological consultation is advised.
Huh. Interesting.
A safe behind a painting. A little cliche. But hey, at least the Merc appreciates the arts. You could learn a thing or two.
I'm wondering more how it ended up on the ground. Juliet must have been in a hurry.
Yeah. Something twisted happened here, V. If life's taught me one thing, it's that a safe's a good spot to hide your valuables.
It's got a reader, too. Must be an access shard around.
Well, there's Juliet. I mean, I can just do a simple system collapse. Hey, Julie. Oh my god, it's been ages. How's life? Guess I'm writing with something on my mind. Remember when we were kids? We played on that old dam? We'd shout our names, some stupid stuff, and listen for the echoes. How our voices carried through the valley. Sometimes I still feel I can hear them. Different strange words, like returning from a long trip out of town. Funny, right? I don't know, Julie. Truth is, everything's going off the rails. I feel worse and worse. Losing my job certainly didn't help. And what the hell good was that new cyberware for, huh? Ugh. I hope I'm not scaring you or asking too much, but it was just thinking how it'd be nice to hear your voice, not just some echo of it. Maybe that's what I need to get right again. Rosie, of course, I remember the dam. Even at the time, we tried to kick that gonk Benny Dillard and his drone off of it. And yeah, I did hear about the job. I'm really sorry. That sucks so hard. But listen, I've been talking to Sign. We agree you should stay with us for a while, at least until you feel better. Come on, just like old times.
I'm starting to like this less and less. Best stay on our toes.
I've already solved it. Ms. Oregon, I'm happy you turned to me instead of those clean-cut scam artists. But I am sorry I don't have good news for you. The symptoms you described indicate a serious disorder that will continue to progress regardless of next steps taken. In cases like this, I'm afraid no level of help will give you your sister will do much good. The only real cure is one of the two max tac ways, if you understand my meaning. It's good you reached out to me, but it's best if you contact them next. The quicker they get on this, the safer it'll be for everyone around her, including you. What's going on with Rose? Clara Horrigan to Juliet Horrigan. Julie, since yesterday, Rose called me 40 times, but all I ever hear on the line is erratic breathing, and I never get a response when I call her back. Do you know what's going on? I'm really worried. Love, Mom. Hey, Mom. Everything's all right. You know Rosie. When you have 100 implants like she does, chances are at least one's got a chip loose somewhere. Don't worry about it. We've got everything all under control. Love you, Juliet. All okay? Urgent. Julie, is all okay? Been a while since we talked last, and I got a few jobs I can't trust anyone else with. Plus, there's still the matter of Mr. KT's data. Right back quick. Time ain't on our side on this one. Capitan. I got nothing. Hope I didn't just screw up everything else. 2 1Cs, 7A 1C. Damn it. Okay, so what about a 1C BDE9? So that sounds like the sister's still really stealth. Yeah, so apparently the malfunction didn't do anything. Well, shoot.
You did this, Juliet!
Well, Seymour, I made it, despite your directions. How you doing, Diluted Daybreak? It was nice to catch you doing some, oop, Oblivion. I'm actually going to be wrapping up reasonably soon, but for those of you who don't know Diluted Daybreak, player of... Oop, player of Rift of the Necrodancer, player of Oblivion, fun to hang out with in the chat, called me philosophical as a euphemism for somebody who doesn't actually play the game. And I think you said in your, you were having a stream anniversary. Ah! Okay, now I am actually in trouble, so. I think you said you were having a stream anniversary on your channel, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, please accept this in lieu of a shout out. This is almost a backhanded shout out. I don't actually intend it that way. But I am in the middle of a fight and I'm clearly screwing it up. So I will try and do a proper one in just a minute. That's nice to hear. I definitely did not take it in a negative way, Diluted Daybreak. I just had to, I couldn't resist the temptation to... Do I want to try? Let's try System Collapse again and see what it does. Okay, so can't grab her, but I can at least get some bonus punches in. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Oh, we should be fine. Sister, on the other hand. Hey, you there? I saw the lights on in your house. I know you're not sleeping. Who is this? Rose? I live facing you. You have to help me. Now. They want to kill me. Hold on. What's going on? Who wants to kill you? Julie and her husband. They work for the corpse. They're trying to poison me with poison gas capsules in my bedroom. Please, you have to help me. Have you been drinking? Taking anything? You don't get it. They're the ones doing this to me. They took my hollow so I couldn't call anyone. Cool your tits, lady, okay? People are trying to sleep here. The police are also in on it. I'm begging you, please. All right, this gives me a chance to... Whoops. Gives me a chance to do a proper shout out for Diluted Daybreak, and I missed the shard. I've been pretty good so far at making sure that I don't accumulate stuff that I'm gonna have to spend a whole stream reading. There we go. Illness diary. Day 67, high temp, migraines, difficulty speaking. Day 68, high temp, migraines, delirious again. Day 69, some improvement. Rosie isn't complaining of pain. She's eating and talking normally again. Maybe the new pills are finally working. Day 71, an attack. Acts like nothing happened. Sai's arms is broken in 2 places. Gave her a triple dose, calmed after an hour. Day 72, as always, she doesn't remember a thing. Sai, that saint of a man, lied and said it was a hit and run. She's back to normal, no more pain. She even made us breakfast for us. Christ. Day 80, even though these pills are draining our bank account dry, at least they're doing the job. Just need to maintain a higher dose. Rosie's back to herself, and only once did I hear her talking in an empty room, as long as she's not hurting anyone. Day 91, another attack. Had to give her a 4 times normal dose. Why do I bother? I can't do this anymore. All right. 255 is a 1C55. I would have thought this would do it. Turns out, no. Huh. So this 1C doesn't get me to a 55. This 1C doesn't get me to a 55. This one only leads me down here. But I wonder if 1C E9, 55, 55, yeah. And then 557A1C. There we go. Anyway, how did the rest... I think you weren't on that much longer after I had to step away, obviously to get ready for this, but it seemed like you were finished with Oblivion not too long after I had to step out, but I hope it went well. For those of you who don't know, by the way, Diluted Daybreak is actually doing an Oblivion run as Sonic the Hedgehog, or Sonic the Khajiit. Your order has been approved. Please keep this confirmation for your records. Lidocaine, 410 milligrams. Beta haloperidol, 200.5 milligrams. Your order will be shipped to the listed address within 5 business days. Oh, very nice. Spinball is the Genesis game, right?
Can't have bad luck all the time.
Paying your respects with 101.9.
Nice. I was actually talking a little bit before, so I only kind of know the Genesis through other people playing it, and then like obviously I get to do whatever there's an emulated version for. But my first exposure to Starflight was seeing somebody play the Genesis adaptation of it, and then
V, how you feeling?
you keep asking that, and you know the answer, Johnny. But one of the things I didn't appreciate at the time was that the company that did the adaptation of Starflight, because the Genesis version was different from...
What happened to Juliet, V? Fuck. She never mentioned she had a sister. It's a crying shame. Thanks for grabbing that data, V. Gig's closed. I'll be in touch.
So yeah, basically, so Starflight's kind of a fun one because I'll take the chance to do the NCPD mission while I can chat about Starflight. It's a neat one because it's like a first, it was like a first game for a bunch of the people who worked on it, including Greg, I think the designer was Greg Johnson, and he would go on to make a roguelike called Toe Jam and Earl, which originally I couldn't quite get to grips with. But then I got to play it again, and I really, really like the idea of that game, actually. So it takes the roguelike elements of like randomized items, and it wasn't entirely clear to me like what an enemy was and what they would do to you and things like that. But like you're two aliens from the planet Funkatron, and you sort of land on Earth. And like, you know, you don't know what any of the items do. Some of them have good things, some of them have bad things. Again, that's just a common roguelike element, and you don't quite understand. Like, you have to sort of make the mistakes and learn like what the various enemies, which are humans, do. And like, as soon as I appreciated that it was basically a satire, right? The old trick of have a couple of aliens visit Earth and how like take none of the stuff that we take for granted. I immediately connected with it and actually thought it was a really smart idea for a game. I haven't really gone that far in it, but I was really charmed as soon as I kind of moved beyond like, this is an incomprehensible mess, like why do people say this is a good roguelike, to like, oh, there's some really neat ideas going on here. But anyway, so apparently one of his first games, if not his first game, was a game called Starflight, which is actually also one of the early games by Electronic Arts. I think Trip Hawkins might even have actually, you know what? I think this is a good enough game. I'm gonna bring up the where is it? All right, Starflight is a space exploration, combat, and trading role-playing video game created by Binary Systems and published by Electronic Arts in 1986. Did they have computers back then? Originally developed for IBM PC compatibles, it was later ported to the Amiga, Atari ST, Mac, and Commodore 64. A fully revamped version of the game was released for the Genesis in 1991. Set in the year 4620, the game puts players in the role of a starship captain sent to explore the galaxy. There is no set path, allowing players to switch freely between mining, ship-to-ship combat, and alien diplomacy. The broader plot of the game emerges slowly as the player discovers that an ancient race of beings is causing stars to flare and destroy all living creatures. The game has been widely praised by both contemporary and modern critics and is one of the earliest instances of a sandbox game. It led to the development of a sequel, Starflight 2, Trade Routes of the Cloud Nebula, and influenced the design of numerous other games for decades after its release. I will include Dwarf Fortress in that, by the way. Apparently, they were quite inspired by the creatures inside of it. The story for Starflight, by the way, is bananas. I really, really like how they finish it off, but I am going to play that on stream again, so... So here's the part that I was interested in. Development. Starflight was developed by Binary Systems, a 5-man team consisting of Rod McConnell, Greg Johnson, lead designer, Alec Kursko, programming, Tim C. Lee, graphics and programming, and Bob Gonsalves. Then Vice President of it was Joe Ybarra. Okay, so then Vice President of Electronic Arts, Joe Ybarra, was closely involved as producer. The original idea for making a video game was conceived by McConnell and Ybarra in 1983. McConnell hired colleague Dave Bolton, who had an idea for using fractals to generate an endless virtual universe, along with Kursko, Gonsalves, Lee, and Johnson, all of whom were first-time game designers. Bolton quit the project early on in development, saying it was too ambitious, with Lee replacing him. This is one of the details that I think is really cool about this one. The team coded the game mostly in Forth, with a few key routines written in x86 assembly, which must have been fun for the Genesis people to figure out. Forth was chosen since it is easier to use than assembly and more compact. This was important because the game had to fit into 128 kilobytes of RAM. It took, quote, 15 man-years and 3 actual years to develop the game. In a 2006 interview, lead designer Johnson said, "I'd never really designed a game before. It's funny looking back on it now. Just by happenstance, I ended up creating a very open-ended system where players could go anywhere and do whatever, and a story sort of unfolded." Ybarra said that the game was almost cancelled more than once and came out about a year behind schedule. Johnson was guided by his friend and office mate, Paul Ritchie III, the designer of Archon, during a period where Ritchie was supposed to be working on mail-order monsters. Ritchie advised Johnson to draft a story network that would highlight all the most important points of the story and list the in-game objects necessary to advance from one to the next. The designers rewrote the script multiple times. The group designed what they called a fractal generator, which took 6 man-years to develop and allowed them to increase the number of planets in the game from 50 to 800. The game was one of the earliest to use procedurally generated content for planets and everything on them. I will note, by the way, though, that they are fixed. So they're procedurally generated, but like it's a fixed seed, kind of like No Man's Sky. So if you go to the same planet, you'll have the same continents and such. Where were we? The techniques used created a type of roguelike environment on each planet with the contents randomly distributed. The story network was also one of the earliest examples of a sandbox game design. They created a separate ecosystem generator over the course of 2 man-years of work. The alien names were created by randomly combining syllables until they had names they liked, and their code for simulating communications was rewritten 4 times before completion. Starflight was released for PC on August 15th, 1986, originally available only on IBM Tandy and compatible PCs. It was released for the Amiga and Commodore 64 in 1989 and the Atari ST and Macintosh in 1990. A Sega Genesis version was published in 1991. Genesis version has new graphics modifications to the ship and upgrades for the terrain vehicle, including equipment to allow amphibious mining. Yeah, no problem, Dooley to Daybreak. Hope you have a Have a good night. But yeah, so anyways, the team that did the adaptation of the Genesis version, I'm wondering if I can find the link for that. Again, I know I said this to the stream before, but the big takeaway on that one was it turns out that the group that adapted the Genesis version wound up doing a Cyberpunk game, the Shadowrun adaptation. Now, I'm curious when EA was... So EA was founded in 1982. So I guess it's 4 years after it was developed. All right, V, you crazy bastard. You're just blazing through these gigs like a wildfire. Just wish everyone was like you, you know? The name V doesn't look the same, doesn't look like some pretentious nickname anymore. It's starting to carry some serious weight. Nothing to lighten the load like a few more gigs. Don't worry, I saved the premiest ones just for you.
Time's running out.
Oh, crap. Alright, so that's the person I didn't want to move, but... Alright, I kind of can't believe I got away with that, but I'll take it. Not so sure what to do about this sucker, though. Yeah, you know what? Archive conversation, Arcadius Loaf and Spencer Young, Ben stealing parts. Who? You know Ben, our mechanic. You got proof? Could be serious. Do you? Hang on, let me write. Anyway, it all started the other day when my ride suddenly stopped in the middle of the street. Of course, I called for help. After a while, guy comes by and says to me, "Get to the fucking point, Loaf. Hang on." And he says, well, he asks actually, if I've been putting shit replacement parts in the car. And there I'm like, what replacement parts, right? Choom, stop, just stop. What do you mean? I mean, I get it. You can't just fucking slog around through another one of your novels. Been swapping out parts in our cars for cheaper ones and selling the more expensive ones on the side. Exactly, so let's go get them. How soon can you get there? It'll be 30 to 40 minutes tops. Okay, see ya. Notes. To remove, Chevalier Emperor, 2 timing chain tensioners, 4 main bearings, 2 crankcase front gaskets, 3 pressure sensors, 2 thermostats, Villafort Cortez, 5 ignition coils, 1 fuel gauge, 1 head gasket, 4 brake rotors, Villafort Columbus, 3 transmission bearings, 1 AC compressor, 2 hydraulic pumps, Quadra Turbo R740, 2 performance air filters, 2 clutches, 6 fuel filters, 1 throttle body unit, and a partridge in a pear tree. Or eagle in a pear tree. Alright, I think that might be it. If anybody has anything they want to say or ask or any last-minute thoughts, I'll find my car and start pointing to the next mission, but I think it's probably not a bad time to finish. I've hit slightly over my usual finishing time. Oh, actually, what I'll do, I'll line up a new gig, and I will scrap the... I'll scrap all the weapons that I don't need. Maniac! All right. So getting rid of the stuff that's not iconic is the easy part. Okay, Shura, Nikotama, Grad, Achilles, Copperhead. Okay, so 2 Copperheads, tier 5, 5+. Sidewinder, Umbra, Kate, 2 Umbras. Both are ++s. Both have 3 slots. Don't think I'm going to hang on to a light machine gun. Okay, 2 DNs. Only one is ++. Okay, 2 of these, +++. Oh, 3 of these. And they're both double pluses, both have 2 slots. Okay, 2 of these, both double plus. Basically, also both empty, so they're identical. Go for the one with more mods, I guess. Okay, both double plus. This one's got 3, so. Okay, so 2 overtures, one's plus, one's plus. I guess I go for the one with the mods in it. And we've got a baseball bat, crowbar, batons, pipes, knife. I think. No, we're good. Oh, there we go. There's the double. That one's the obvious one. I know there's like purple mods, but the other one was ++. Now the thing is, I've never really upgraded these, so I might be sort of trashing the wrong ones. It may be easy to just add an extra slot, or it might be easy to bring it to a tier ++. But honestly, at this point, I've got enough money, and I figure more components won't hurt right now. But yeah, I think that's it for me. I will try and clean up my saves as much as I can. But the plan for the next little while, so if things go as they seem to be, Monday's Canadian holiday, so I'll be taking that for myself. Wednesday's local game dev meetup, which means I'll be back for Cyberpunk on Friday. Again, if that changes for any reason, because sometimes I just reserve the option of streaming if I sort of feel up to it, I will announce on Twitter or the Discord or wherever you want to know. I'll try and communicate that if things change. Otherwise, more Cyberpunk on Friday, and then on Monday and Wednesday of the following week, so not next week, but the week after, we should be back to Ace Attorney, or Ace Attorney Trilogy. And then I think I have been enjoying the time in Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop. So what I may be doing with that as well is if I'm between episodes of Ace Attorney or otherwise sort of feel like a change of pace, I'll probably do more Uncle Chops. But let's see if there's anybody online to host tonight. We have Will Shand, who is a good sport. I knew him back in Vancouver when I lived there. He does a bunch of fun, strange, low budget, independent, usually horror games, but not exclusively. He's definitely got it's a fun atmosphere. I like kind of hanging out with him. And he's the best available. So I will leave you all in his capable hands. Definitely a fun guy to watch. I will be back latest in a week, I guess. Until then, I hope you have a good night, and we'll see you in the next one.